Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have guest Rob Jung. He is the author of a book called Cloud Warriors, and I think another book called Reapers. We're going to be talking about his paranormal experiences and how they influenced him to write these books, and about ancient cultures, especially down in Peru. I've been reading his book, Cloud Warriors, about a lost tribe. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it, but a lost tribe back in time of the Incas that was fair-skinned and also had blue eyes. How does that happen? It was a real tribe that existed, and it inspired Rob Jung to write this book, and it's really good. I'm really enjoying it, and we'll talk about that tonight. And of course, we'll have the phone lines open later for you to call in, ask your questions. But we had a lot of weird for the World Wide Web weird tonight. I had to really try to think of what to whittle it down to, because man, there was a lot I wanted to cover. I always try to keep it to 7 articles, and there was a lot I had to cut out. Maybe we'll save it for next Sunday if some of it fits in. There seems to be a lot of weird going on. Maybe it's the holidays, I don't know, but we got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling into the show. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest, Rob Jung, will join us after the World Wide Web of Weird. But we got my lovely co-host, Jamie D, with us tonight. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Ready to get into the World Wide Web of Weird? I don't think I sent it to you, so you don't even have an idea what the World Wide Web of Weird is going to be tonight. I had so much, I did it right up to the last second because I'm like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? So much. There was just a lot of weird. And running the World Wide Web of Weird, hopefully, he's ready, is Rob Autry himself from St. Augustine, Florida. How you doing, Rob?
Oh, pretty good.
I hear you. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
All right, man. But yeah, there's a number of things in the World Wide Web of Weird. Like I said, man, I really had to try to whittle this down to just sometimes it's like, oh, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that. There's been a lot lately. Every World Wide Web of Weird, I'm really having to decide, it's a hard decision. Which article am I going to cut? Because I always try to keep it to 7. There was a lot. So speaking of, let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, well, I always wonder if I want to cover this story. It's not the continuing saga of the Mothman of Chicago. There seems to be more and more reports, a lot of them, of course, coming from Singular 14, but other sites have carried some of these sightings, and I have to say this one's interesting. It's what is this? The title of this from Singular 14. Trucker reports 7-foot-tall person with wings near O'Hare International Airport. This is from December 6th from Singular 14. It's been going on now, 3 years, 4 years? I don't know. What's going on in that area? For those listening on our Paranormal Soup radio network, we are a webcast. We're streaming live to Facebook and YouTube. Please share, let everybody know we're live right now. But we cover videos, articles, things we share. You can see, but if you like to listen, just listen then on the radio network, and I will narrate as best as possible. But first off, like I said, this is from Singular 14. Trucker reports 7-foot-tall person with wings near O'Hare International Airport. Manuel Navarrete of UFO Clearinghouse received a report recently from a man who said he was standing outside a cargo dock on O'Hare National Airport in Chicago when he spotted a 7-foot-tall person with wings just outside of a fence by the parking lot. The sighting reportedly took place at approximately 6:30 p.m. on November 26. According to the report, I was at the report. This is according to the report. This is from the witness. I was at the airport picking up a load of Nippon Cargo Airlines. I was already backed into a dock and was standing away from the truck smoking a cigarette while they loaded my truck. I was looking towards the runway in the direction of the tunnel, and that is when I noticed something that looked like a large bird standing just outside the fence by the parking lot. It was not hard to miss because 2 street lamps were nearby. It looked like a person with wings that were stretched out and flapping. It was walking away from the fence towards the open field, and then it began to flap its wings and disappeared. Navarrete was able to speak with the witness over the phone. I spoke with the witness via the phone and was able to get a little more information regarding the sighting, investigators said. The witness primarily speaks Spanish, but was able to report the sighting with the help of his daughter and her boyfriend. He was standing away from his truck as it was being loaded, smoking a cigarette, when he said he caught movement out of the corner of his eye and saw a being standing near a parking lot was illuminated by 2 street lights. The witness stated that the creature was about 7 feet tall, using the fence as a point of reference. When I asked him how he was able to be so certain as to the height of this being, the driver stated he has been to this location multiple times, and he estimates the fence to be about 8 feet high. Using the fence, he was certain that the being was at least 7 feet tall. When I asked how large the wings were, he said at least 6 feet across and back. The witness used language seen in previous sighting reports from largely Hispanic neighborhoods of the Chicago Little Village. When I asked him to describe the being, he said it looked like a demon or a goblin. I'm not going to say the Spanish version. I don't speak Spanish. And was solid black. The witness said he saw nothing that looked like eyes, and he assumed the creature might have had his back turned to him. He stated that it walked like a giant, or walked with a gait like a bird, and that it was flapping its wings as it walked towards the large field, that it was by the runways and disappeared into the night. Also present was a sense of evil, similarly reported by previous witnesses. The witness did state that when it disappeared, it quickly did the sign of the cross. He quickly did the sign of the cross and the Virgin Mary for protection. He put out his cigarette and quickly walked back into his truck. When I asked him why he did that, he stated that he felt a presence that was evil and was convinced that he had seen a demon. When asked to elaborate on the statement, the witness refused to talk about it anymore for fear of it coming back. Don't speak of Lord Voldemort. I don't know. I respected his wishes and went on to ask other questions about the time, conditions, if there were other potential witnesses to this sighting. Oh, great. Now I'm getting this theme messed up on me. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I had a little trouble here with my phone I'm reading on. When I asked if he had seen something similar before, the witness stated that he had before, when he was a teenager back home in Mexico. The witness stated that he saw a solid black winged creature that was circling an open field that he and other children were playing soccer in. He stated it circled the field and made a loud screeching noise before flying off into the surrounding forest. When I asked him if he remembered the date of the sighting, he stated he did not remember the exact date, but a week later there was a large earthquake in Mexico City. See, there it is. There it is, right? The clincher. Is there going to be a disaster in Chicago? Well, we've been waiting on this for 4 years now. They've been talking about that. I hope not. I mean, as I said, you don't want to have the Mothman sightings in your area, obviously, or these kind of bat-like creatures. It's never good, but is it a lot to do with nothing? I don't know.
Maybe he was just checking out the big mechanical birds. I don't know. At the airport.
No, I mean, what I'm thinking is some kind of bird that he's not getting the distance right on, or something else that's make him think of. But I mean, I don't know. So
maybe the Mothman was checking out the mechanical birds.
What that could be
strange creature,
or there's dear God, I hope I don't want to fly.
Yeah,
right now.
Not out of the air.
Not at O'Hare. Yeah. I don't know. They just had a Midway that some rapper had an aneurysm or something, but I don't know. But all right, let's move on. We got another creature theme. This is from Phantoms and Monsters. A lot of creature stuff tonight. And there's one after this we're going to get to that's an old one. Not old, but like it's from a couple years ago. And I think I showed it before, but it's circling around. So we're going to get to that in a second, a Bigfoot one. But we're going to go to flying gargoyle encountered in Tampa, Florida. So Chicago near me, Tampa near Rob. And this is, like I said, from phantomsandmonsters.com. At an incident in Tampa, Florida. A winged creature sighting. Driving to work an early morning. It wasn't dark, but not quite daylight out. Going around a curve in a road, knowing I'm coming up to a light. It was always red, and I always have to stop. For one of the only times I can remember, I somehow was the first vehicle stopped at the intersection. I knew I needed to keep an eye on the light, so I'm looking up, waiting for it to turn green, and I just happened to catch something moving along to my left. It was flying from left to right, south to north. I won't lie, I did not get to see it for long, but it was 1 to 3 seconds, and it was as clear as I could possibly imagine. It looked just like a gargoyle. Large backlight wings, hands crunched up tight in front of it, legs crunched up as well, gliding along. Wings didn't flap. Now, I don't claim to have the world's greatest eye or be an expert of all things relating to distance, but I know what it looked like. I'm certain of its size, which would be about a large man. And I know it wasn't that far in front of me. I had a lot of objects in my foreview to help get a good perception. Could have been anything else other than a gargoyle. Of course, I'm not crazy. That's just what it looked like. S. That's anonymous. Just leave the letter S. Well, S. I don't know. Again, is this like, that person saw it 1 to 3 seconds? Could it, their brain just translated something else? I don't know.
It is all Florida, though.
Oh, you got that echo, man. Like it's Rob from United Amphitheater.
Yes. There, it should be gone.
There, you're good. Okay. But no, people getting these bat-like creature sightings in different parts of the country. Not good. Kind of scares me. I don't like the sounds of that.
Yeah, kind of strange.
All right. Well, this next one is from 2016. I don't like to go back on a story. I don't know. You guys. Oh, no. Wait, never mind. Not this next one. Not this one. It's the one after this one. I forgot about this one. I added this one. See, I had a lot of different ones I kept on interchanging. And this one kind of plays into this. So we got these bat-like winged creatures and stuff like this. Well, this article might have some relation. Who knows? This is from Daily Star. Pig-monkey hybrids created in China genetic labs. This is a new one, by the way. This is not from 2016. This is going to be the next one. Go back to the lab one. The pig monkeys.
Pig monkey.
Article 3. Yeah, you just had it up a second ago. Yeah. Article 3.
It's not
It's not a video. It's a picture. You had it a second ago. That one. There you go. Pig monkey hybrids created in China from Daily Star. The Chinese team has just won several racing to create the perfect host for human organs, extending human lifespans massively. Hold on. My article's screwing up on me. It doesn't want me to read it. Chinese scientists have created a pig monkey hybrid, paving the way for a future in which human organs could be custom grown in animals for transplant. This first report of full-term monkey pig chimera. Tanghai at the State Key Laboratory of Stem Cell and Reproductive Biology in Beijing told New Scientist. The animal had only a small amount of monkey DNA concentrated in the heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and skin cells. The team now is trying to create a healthy animal with a higher portion of monkey cells, says Hai. While the long-term goal is to... Well, didn't my article screws up? Daily Star, you are ridiculous. There we go. Wow. Total reload of the article.
Yeah, don't you love that?
God, I hate that. It said only had a small amount of monkey DNA. Where was I? To go up. Well, anyways, they're cooking these things so they can put organs in them. I say cooking them. I can't even read the article. Daily Star is awful.
I don't know, man. That's just weird science to me.
But this has been coming down the road. It's gonna happen.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna happen whether we want it to or not.
But with all these creature sightings that we just talked about, 2 stories, Blackwing, all that. If you ever watch Ancient Aliens, they always talk about all the DNA stuff the aliens are doing, and how many hybrids or chimeras did they make? Think about all the chimeras and hybrids through ancient Greek culture they talk about in Egypt and everything. Are those leftovers of some genetics experiments aliens did? I don't know.
Like we're cooking up in the secret underground labs.
Well, you ever seen the movie Splice?
Yeah.
Oh, what a god awful movie. What a piece of garbage movie, but it's also scary. It really is a scary movie, and it makes your skin crawl, especially when the scientist decides to have sex with his creation. What the heck, man? I mean, seriously. I mean, you wanna be mind raped? Go watch Splice. It'll make you worried. It does its job, making you worried about what scientists are going to do with DNA and what kind of creatures they're going to create. You know, like, oh my God, what a horrible movie. I mean, literally, I was like, okay, this movie's scaring the crap out of me, and then they just ruined it when he has sex with the thing.
Yeah. I
mean, it's giving me like South Park vibes. You know, the professor with the man bear pig.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. When they wrote that movie and they got to that part of the script, the producer's like, wait a second, maybe we should cut that. That's just going a little too far. Nope. They left it in. All right. This one's from 2016, this next one. And it's really as crappy, grainy quality video footage as you get. And we'll play it here in a second. And I don't know, you guys have to remind me. I feel like we covered this one, but it's been circulating a lot. Like it's just emerged in the, I've seen this shared a lot, and I swear we did cover this in 2016. I'm not sure, but I'm still interested in it. Footage showing a car being pursued by an unknown creature has been doing the rounds on social media. The video was reportedly recorded back in 2016, first appeared online back in the summer, but seems to have managed to evade the attention of the media until now. The footage, which can be viewed further down the page from the article, is somewhat difficult to make out due to the shakiness and poor resolution. And I have a couple of versions, one where they try to do like you see the screen going back and forth because they're trying to get it ready, steady the video. You can see the creature attempting to catch up to the vehicle that's struggling to escape. It's reported filmed by 3 girls and a man who can be heard talking. Of course, you can't understand what they're saying because it's in Russian. They're shouting during the footage and seemingly quite terrified by what's pursuing. But the guy you can tell the guy's driving because he keeps stopping the car. They'll let the thing catch up. Go ahead and play it.
Он скрылся! Его не видно! Его не видно! Он стоит, он знает, что мы снимаем. Он идет туда, нет! Не подходи! Леша, едь!
Ну-ка, где он? Погоди, стой. Снимай.
Снимай.
У тебя зум, есть зум? Прибавь изображение побольше, можешь?
Могу.
Двумя пальцами.
Прибавила.
Я поближе подойду.
Смотри.
Now he's backing up.
Вчера он же, по-моему, был, да? Ага, это он.
Что-то странненько. Он идет. Он бежит. Он встает.
So I would have let that thing come right up to the car.
Don't poke the bear with a stick, man.
Что, ты не можешь ехать?
Well, I got a car, man. It's probably gonna. Well, actually, I got insurance. Did they take Bigfoot claims?
Yeah. Exactly.
Леш.
Леш!
Он бежит.
Look, it starts jumping through the field after him. But look how awkwardly it moves. It doesn't seem like it's got a natural. It looks like a guy struggling in a suit. But it's hard to tell because it's so grainy.
Like, what kind of phone do you have to have to get that crappy of a video, though? Like,
A Russia phone. Here's another version from Sasquatch Now. I think it is. Sasquatch and something now.
Снимай. Он бежит.
This one zooms in a little bit. But you see how its arms come up? It seems like it could be a guy in a suit. Does seem big though.
yeah.
Все, домой нет?
Да, домой.
Still does. It seems like he either's got squirrel arms.
Remember about this footage is
All right, go ahead and stop it though. It seems like he's got squirrel arms or something. At one point, it came up like it's like there's a suit there. I don't know. We got to move on though. We're gonna run out of time. Oh, my article's already messed up. Okay, here we go. All right, this next one is anomaly hunter spot a craft flying over the Antarctic on Google Earth. Anomaly hunter examining Google Earth images of Antarctica believe that they may have stumbled upon a photo of a mysterious craft seemingly flying through the air. Strange discovery was reportedly made by YouTube user Mr. MBB333, who uploaded a video detailing the find earlier this week. The oddity in question sits in the shadows of a massive ice shelf and appears to be almost triangular in shape. Based on the way in which the object appears to be reflecting light, he argues that it's an airborne and speculating that the anomaly measures a whopping 300 feet wide. It definitely would be big. I should have got the full map view. It would, if you Google it, the coordinates to this, you can find this. Coast to Coast AM has it. But the coordinates, whatever, if you went to it, it's huge. Whatever, yeah, at least 300 feet wide. As often the case, observers online have offered a number of theories of the source of the puzzling shape. More imaginative viewers theorize that the object is some kind of craft, either of an alien variety or perhaps a clandestine vehicle being used by the powers that be to explore Antarctica. I don't know if he can prove that it's flying. And I have a couple other shots of it where he did, like you said, the heat signatures of it. Let's see. I want to make sure we got it. Jamie back. There's another shot I have. There should be two other photos, Rob.
Definitely looks big.
Yeah, go to the other two. There we go. There's some like heat ones. He says this proves that it's flying or something. I don't know, because of the reflection. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
There's one other one he did. Oh, like a negative of it. It'd definitely be big. It definitely has that triangle shape thing. I mean, you remember Terry Lovelace, his triangle ship would have been about that big, at least. All right, we got to move on.
Trippy.
Oh, I'm missing my 7th article. I just realized it somehow has disappeared from my theme. I'll figure it out when we get there. Oh, I remember. I'm going to have to pull that out on my phone. All right, let's go to, we're running out of time here. All right, this one, I'm just saying, large fireball UFO filmed over North Carolina. This large glowing object was spotted moving across the sky while intersecting a path of the airplane. The footage was recorded by Kimberly Jordan, who posted it on YouTube October 28th to ask if anyone had any idea what it was identified could be. Saw this on my drive in South Carolina. I've never seen anything like it before. I would really like to know. I find it interesting because of the plane. Go ahead and play it because we're running short on time.
The second largest auto insurer in the country. Okay. Geico even offers 24/7 access to licensed agents and emergency roadside service. And while hugs don't always go as expected, you could expect your local Geico agent to help you save even more. Like with federal and military discounts.
You couldn't save yourself the embarrassment of a handshake hug, but you could save yourself.
I love the commercial in the background.
Yeah, exactly. I saw something similar to this just the other day.
This was October 28th. It's just kind of started making the rounds.
It was in the daytime. It wasn't near as bright as this, but I could see the trail coming off of it. And
then this plane kind of flies near it. Or some people are speculating, is the plane like checking it out or intersecting it? It's moving slow unless it's way up in the atmosphere still. I don't know.
Yeah, what I saw the other day, I just thought it was like a meteorite or something just coming in and burning up.
Sunday, May 5th, noon to 5 at the historic Columbia Speedway. Presented by 100.1 The Beat.
I don't know. I got one more article. Let's go ahead and get to it because I'm going to run out of time. And I'm trying to find it, actually, because I took it off my notes. Oh, now it's gone. This last one's really interesting. I want the article, dang it. Where'd it go? Huh. Oh, damn it. I'm having a problem with my accessory for my phone. Oh, no, that's not it. Huh. I totally lost this article. Yeah, it's about this Deep Prasad, this quantum physicist who had an alien abduction experience, which I thought was really interesting for a quantum experience or for a quantum physicist to have that experience. And like the article's like completely gone from my notes and everything. That's so weird. All of it. How did they get the like 2 different spots? The articles disappeared. What the heck?
They don't want you to see it,
or want me to talk about it.
Exactly.
Like, these are all way old articles. Yeah, totally gone. Yeah, the article's totally disappeared. It's not in my notes. It's not in this. Well, if you can find the article, it's really interesting. Quantum physicist has an alien abduction experience. I mean, for scientists to have that kind of, experience like that. Now, dang it, I have like nothing on it. It took it all out of my notes, took it off of my reading list.
See, that's how they work. I know nothing. You have seen nothing. Look into the flashy thing. Look into the flashy thing, people.
Right. They totally took it from my list completely. It's an interesting article. I really wanted to read it. Of course, I ran out of time now. But it's like totally gone. Totally gone. Wow. I know I saved it in 2 different spots. That's so weird. It's gone. Just gone. But yeah, these are some of the pictures yet. 100% certainty. I hope this helps. I felt no weight from them, but he said their touch felt like hard plastic. He has this like whole experience. It's really interesting. He posted his experience on Twitter and these pictures he drew. But for a quantum physicist who's could get ridiculed, lose grants, he's really putting his neck out there to tell people about this experience. I'd love to have him on to talk about it. You imagine talking to a quantum physicist about his abduction experience, what insights he can give, just what he knows. All right. Oh, we got to make sure we add Jamie back.
The bummer of, especially like, me, somebody just some average Joe, you can talk about whatever pretty much. But yeah, if you're like, some renowned physicist or something, and something like this does happen to you, you want to talk about it because you could lose everything. Oh, that guy's completely crazy.
Right. We're not going to give him a grant. We're not going to give him government cheese. Well, that's it for the World Wide Web Weird. Our guest tonight is Rob Jung. We're going to talk about his book, Cloud Warriors, and his experiences in Peru that inspired him writing this book. We will open the phone lines up after the second commercial break. Call in with your questions tonight. Your own. Have you been to Peru? Have you any theories about this? I think really interesting about culture that existed there. Or civilization exists there. They were fair-skinned and blue-eyed, and there's other cultures like that throughout. Other places where they, like I know there was in China. There was, I think Madagascar had them. Where did these fair-skinned, blue-eyed people come from? Some say Vikings. I don't know. We'll get into that. Rob loves history too, so we'll get into that. He's had his own paranormal experiences, and don't forget. Follow, subscribe, share the show out, tell your friends about it. Help us out on Patreon. $2 a month helps us stream out to YouTube and Facebook. We can do this, show everybody's comments here from YouTube and on Facebook. All that helps when you help donate to the show. So help us out. But we'll be back with our guest, Rob Jung, after this short commercial break.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do voices from beyond the cold case files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
encounters of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It's called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Certificate A, now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
It's the holiday season, and many people can't wait for that special day when they get to open their gift. Just as unbearable can be the wait for the cold comfort of the grave. But friends, you don't have to die to sleep like the dead. This Christmas morning, give the gift of a coffin-quality pillow. Why make your loved ones wait till the afterlife for the comfort of rest eternal when you can give a coffin-quality pillow today?
Coffin-quality pillows by Serta. Available everywhere tasteless items are sold. Coffin and grave sold separately.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
He is conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
This fall, a new hard-hitting police drama is coming to Friday night. He was a well-to-do cop transferred to a troubled precinct downtown. His new partner is a space traveler with a passion for justice. It's Yuppie and the Alien.
Look, you might vaporize dissidents in Alpha Centauri, but in this precinct, we do it by the book.
I'm so terribly sorry, Captain.
Goog, I'm sorry. Don't miss this one-of-a-kind police drama. They're fighting crime the hard way in designer clothes with $250,000 sports car and a UFO.
Partner, let's go cruise in the car and look moody.
One tough downtown precinct, two outsiders doing things their way. Yuppie and the Alien on VBC.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe, 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Rob Jung. Born in the wine country of California, grew up in beautiful Little Mississippi River in the town of Wisconsin, educated in Minnesota State University System and Harvard Law School. Rob Jung now lives the writer's life in suburban St. Paul, Minnesota with his wife, Kathy. A newspaper writer for 7 years while getting his undergraduate degree at Winona State University, Jung has practiced law for 47 years. He began working on his fiction writing craft more than a decade ago. A lifelong student of history, geography, and religion, Jung traveled in every continent except Antarctica and has stories often find their origins in historical events from countries outside the U.S. Jung also lists among his credits inventor, entrepreneur, gourmet chef, master gardener, race car driver, fishing guide, and storyteller. He has written 4 novels, the first 2 which are safely tucked in the back of a secret drawer. I have some of those. Chance of injury to either reader of literary world if they read it. His third and first published novel, Cloud Warriors, is published by John Hutt Publishing UK. The Reaper's second published novel is his first book in the Chimera Chronicles, a series that introduces Magnolia Canarzi, I probably butchered that, his most heinous villain since Hannibal Lecter. His next novel, The Sour, the second book in the Chimera Chronicles, will be released in spring of 2020. It's also scheduled for 2020's First Witch, a paranormal thriller set in Ireland. That sounds really interesting. I just started reading Cloud Warriors. It's a really interesting book. We're going to get into that and a lot and his influences of that tonight. And I know I got Rob waiting on the line. Hold on, Rob. You're going to hear me disconnect. Having technical issues there. There we go. Make sure he connects good. All right. But let's go ahead and get to our guests. Hopefully we still got him there. Are you there, Rob?
I am, Jason.
Hi. Bear with me. I have a little technical problem there with the phone line I have you on. It was the audio thing with Jack was messing up on it. So hopefully we don't have any other issues. I'm not going to touch it. Hopefully it stays that way. But thank you for joining us.
I'm electronically impaired, so I understand.
I'm sometimes electronically cursed and cat cursed. Got a cat that was messing up the line that actually pulled on the line, and I'm like, "Oh, you're disconnected. Let me reconnect you." Great. So hopefully, no more shenanigans for my cat if she goes away. But thank you for joining me this late hour to talk about your book, Cloud Warriors. Like I said, I just started reading it. I'm really enjoying it, and about your experiences. So, how did the becoming a writer after being in law all those years? What made you want to decide to start writing books?
Actually, I was a storyteller, and that's what got me started. I was a few years ago, quite a few years ago now. I gave a birthday or a Christmas present to my 2 oldest grandkids, who are now in their early 20s, but back then they were in 3rd, 4th grade, and I gave them Thursdays with Grandpa, and I'd pick them up after school and take them to an ice cream place, ruin their dinner, and then
that's what grandpas do.
You bet. And then tell stories. And I developed a series of pirate stories, and they became characters in the stories.
Oh, you would have been a favorite grandpa of mine for that.
That went on for about a year. And then when they were teenagers, maybe, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years later, they said, "Grandpa, did you ever write any of those down?" And of course I hadn't, because I just was winging them off the top of my head. But it got me thinking that maybe I ought to start doing that. So,
did you know a lot of pirate history?
Oh, yeah.
Being a story?
Yeah, because I spent a lot of time in the Caribbean.
Oh, God, I'm so jealous.
So pirate history was, one of my goofy passions.
Did you ever get in your stories with your grandkids? Because I always, going back to it, my grandmother used to read me stories, and one book that had one about pirates, and it was very fairy tale-ish, but To Know the Truth Now is about Blackbeard.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by the pirate Blackbeard. Have you heard of how he died? That's one of the most interesting stories. Like when they finally, they had him cornered basically. When they had the final battle with the what it would have been, was it the British?
Yep.
And that he was beheaded. And that his body still swam around the boat. That's always creeped me out, that story. Yeah, that legend, I guess. I don't know. Legend, or is it real?
Those of us who like to believe in those kinds of things, it's definitely real, or it's a real legend.
It is. I mean, that's what always fascinated from a kid, I don't think my grandmother told me about his had the story, had anything about his body flow, but later on, as I grew up and read more about pirates, because I've always been fascinated by, the pirate stories, especially Blackbeard, that account that his body swam around the boat after it was beheaded.
Well, Edward Teach, which was Blackbeard's real name, probably would have been in modern day committed to some insane asylum.
Oh yeah,
because he was one bizarre character.
He was a serial killer. I mean, he'd be listed as a serial killer nowadays.
Oh yeah, and a terrorist.
Yeah, and a terrorist. Yeah.
Yeah. So he is a fascinating story, but there's a lot of fascinating pirates. I actually have another nom de plume, if you will, J.R. Rackham, or C.J. Rackham. I'm sorry, which is actually a takeoff of a fairly well-known pirate named Calico Jack Rackham.
Right.
That was probably one of the worst pirates in the world.
He had the two women with him, right?
You've got it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They were really running the show, it sounds like.
Anne Bonny and Mary Smith. Well, Anne Bonny at the trial in London said, if the coward hadn't been hiding in his chest, we might have had a chance. But he went and hid in the chest in the captain's chambers while the British overwhelmed the ship.
While the women fought.
And she was 8 months pregnant at the time. And so they actually acquitted her, and she became one of London's famous madams.
Yeah.
Mary Smith, the other woman, who was also pregnant at the time, seems to be an epidemic.
But weren't they both pregnant by him, supposedly?
I don't know that. I know that Anne Bonny was. I don't know about Mary Smith, but she disappeared. I don't know what happened to her, but they were both acquitted because they were pregnant. Even though Anne Bonny was the tough guy on the boat, if you will.
Yeah. Like I said, I think they were running the show.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what is so amazing. Women had rights and ran the show back then for pirates. They had a democracy and everything. Sorry, you talk about pirates. I get into it.
Yeah.
Watch.
Well, it's one of the reasons I love female villains.
No. Yeah.
In my writing, and that's why Magnolia Canarenzi is.
I could not pronounce that name.
Yeah, I know. Well, the name comes off a road sign.
Really?
In about 4 hours east of Sturgis. So there's a story in my second book about how her name came about.
So tell me about, because I definitely see, in Cloud Warriors, we'll get into it a little bit later about some of the paranormal influences in that book. What are your experiences in the paranormal? What weird has happened to you to influence you to write a story like Cloud Warriors?
Well, there's been a couple of instances in my life that I can't attribute, to the normal experience or the scientific things. But I got to tell you a little backstory. I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago in anticipation of coming on your show. And I said, I've been in some of the most haunted places in at least the Western Hemisphere. The Queen Mary.
Oh, yeah.
The Menger Hotel outside of the Alamo. There's a place up in Traverse City, Michigan. It's an inn that's up in Grand Traverse, up in the peninsula. That's got 3 or 4 books written about it. I can't think of the name of the inn right now. Nothing has ever happened to me in any of those places. I mean, even though I've gone sort of hoping.
Right.
But the kind of thing, or the things that have happened to me, the first thing that ever happened to me was I was literally sitting with my wife on a kitchen counter late one night. It wasn't late one night, and I had a glass of water in front of me, about half full, and it suddenly moved across the table and tipped over and broke.
Did it break on the table or break on the floor?
Yeah. No, it broke on the table.
Oh, wow.
Just slid across the table, slid about 2 feet across the table and tipped over and broke. As we're both standing there or sitting there, also, with our jaws open, saying,
right.
What in the hell? There was never any connection, never any, I don't know what it was, but that was my first thing that ever happened in my life that we couldn't explain. My dad, who died fairly young, appeared out of nowhere one night at the end of my bed and said, I'm leaving now. He'd been dead for about 3 years at the time.
How old were you?
Probably, let's see. My dad was 71 when he died. So I would have been about 35 to 38, somewhere in there. Which meant the first question that popped into my mind was, where you been? You're going, so, but I was close to my dad. My dad was a fine man. And it was sad. He died of prostate cancer, at a fairly, at 71, which looking now is a fairly young age. But the experience of that was so real. I mean, it was like he was standing there.
And you knew you were awake. You weren't dreaming, or
no, I wasn't. I hadn't been asleep.
Yeah, so you just laid down and it happened.
Yeah, and it was there. And
did you hear his voice, or
yes? Yeah, I heard his voice.
You think you heard it with your ears, or?
Boy, I wish I could tell you. I don't know.
Yeah,
at this stage of the game, whether it was inside my head or whether it was actually here.
I can so relate to that. I can so relate. I've had a number of experiences like that, and it's like, was that with my ears or was it in my head? It's like, I've had some. The reason you question it is because I've had some experiences where I've heard something where I thought I was hearing it with my ears, but nobody else was hearing it. So
yeah,
it's like there's something, I've had it where I know when I saw my grandmother after she passed, it was the day of her wake, that was totally in my head. But it almost sounded like I could almost thought it was in my ears, Yeah. It's a weird experience.
Yeah. Well, the other, I've had one more that I can identify. There's probably a bunch of others that don't stand out as much, but could easily fall into the same realm. But the other one had to do with a portrait.
A haunted painting?
A painting that was hanging on the wall. All these things happened at the same house. So I'm wondering if it hadn't, in hindsight, I'm wondering if it didn't have something to do with the location.
Right. Where were you living? Where was the house at?
The house is in Golden Valley, Minnesota. Okay. We moved out of it, now 25 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
But all three of these events that I'm talking about all happened in that house. My wife used to travel a lot with an organization called World's Vision, and she bought three paintings from a street artist in Johannesburg, and we had them hanging in our living room. And the center painting was a portrait of a man in a big fur hat, and it was a profile. I mean, it wasn't profile. It was just the bust. It wasn't the whole body. And that painting would make noise.
What kind of noise?
And it was almost like a crackling noise. That's the best way I can put it.
Like snack, crackle, pop, like your Rice Krispies.
Yeah. Only it didn't have the snap and the pop. It was just a crackling noise. It wasn't scary or terrifying, but it was consistent.
Well, I always go back when I ask somebody, I'm a paranormal investigator. So if somebody's telling me this, I go, okay, can you think of the first time you heard it? What was going on? I know it's been a while, but what was going on the first time you heard it?
What was going on my first time I heard it? First time we heard it. I think actually my wife brought it to my attention.
Usually the wife does.
Yeah. But I can't remember what.
Your wife at some point, your wife goes, "Hey, Rob, do you hear that?"
Yeah. Come in here and look at this picture. And it would. I mean, and it wasn't something you'd hear while you were around the corner. I mean, you'd go and it would do it. I mean, it was like it was almost talking to you. Now, the interesting thing was that went on as long as we lived in that house. In that picture, none of the other two.
Just that. And did you go up and listen to the picture, it's this picture?
Yeah.
How loud was it? I mean, was it just very faint?
No, it wasn't loud, but it wasn't faint. If you know what I mean, it was like, something a little less than a conversational tone.
Wow.
But it was just this crackling thing, and it didn't happen 100% of the time, but it happened often enough that it drew your attention. Then when we moved, we took the paintings with us, and it never happened again.
Do you still have the painting?
Yeah, it's hanging right outside my office.
Never did it again. See, it could be the location. Did you?
What I'm thinking.
Did you ever notice any kind of pattern with it? Make any correlations, maybe?
No, I really didn't. We always said it was the man in the picture communicating with us, but I mean that was just our imagination.
Or it could have been something in the house that was fascinated or piqued the interest of something in that house.
Precisely. I think. Excuse me. I think looking back, because all three of the incidents I've related happened in that house. So I think that maybe it had more to do with the location than it did with me.
Yeah.
I just happened to be there.
Well,
and I haven't had any conversations with the people we sold it to.
Well, I always say, the experience with your father, I always say a lot of people don't live in a haunted house. A lot of people don't experience ghostly activity, but I see a lot of people, when you talk to people, when being a paranormal investigator, I'm doing this show, I have people come to me, the most common experience I hear from people, they have anything to relate to the paranormal, is a loved one that's passed, that's come through to them like that. I've had that experience, and I hear it from people all the time. This most number one common, if somebody's going to tell me about a paranormal experience, 90% of the time, it's usually a loved one that's come through like that. And your father, he said, oh, it's time for me to go.
No, he said, I'm going now.
I'm going now.
Yeah.
And how long had he been passed before that point?
About 3 years.
3 years, you said? So
Yeah.
you wonder, he'd been with you for those 3 years.
Yeah.
And then decided it's time for him to move on.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only conclusion I can draw from the what he said. I don't remember anything else that was said. And the whole thing probably lasted less than a minute, but it was just so vivid.
And he looked solid and real.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's that's the thing. The ones with the family members, or some of them, like a lot of people have ghostly experiences, something moving like your cup, and or seeing something out of the corner of their eye. But the family ones, when it's a loved one come through, they can be the most vivid, real looking, like they are there and still alive in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, drawing on some other kind of powerful energy to be able to do that, to come through.
I'm convinced. I have become convinced. I was a skeptic for a long time, but I've become convinced that obviously there are people that have gifts that we don't, that the ordinary people don't understand. Gifts of being able to, I don't know what you want to call it, but reach into another dimension. Maybe
I'm a big fan of the multiverse idea and other dimensions.
Have the ability to go into a different dimension, or at least to communicate on a different level than the rest of us do. I have a friend a woman friend who has written a couple of books about. I don't think she calls it paranormal activity, but she has a gift that has surpasses scientific understanding. And
psychic gift,
psychic kind of gift. I have a sister-in-law who's a medium, and who in fact is, if you've read, you started reading Cloud Warriors. Have you run across the character Carrie Waters?
The medium.
Yeah, Carrie Waters is my sister-in-law.
Oh, so you based it off of her?
Yeah, much of that story about Carrie Waters' backstory is my sister-in-law's life story, and so it's an interesting. She was kind enough to let me do that.
How long had you known your sister-in-law had these abilities?
Well, my sister-in-law, this particular sister-in-law, I always thought was weird. And my brother, my next youngest brother, who's married to her.
Your brother. So this is your brother's wife.
My brother's wife, and he got into shamanism, and he and I had just delightful talks about this, and then he started talking about the gifts and the communications that his wife would be involved with. Our mother passed away. I don't know, 6 years ago now, 7 years ago, at 98. And my brother and I kind of got better acquainted. We're 10 years apart, but better acquainted over that because we kind of split the duties of taking care of mom's estate and taking care of mom her last couple of years. And that's where I got to know that there's a lot more to it than her just being sort of strange. And so I sat down with her for about 3.5 hours one afternoon and asked her about her life story. And she and my brother, and it was fascinating. And a good bit of that ends up in the book. One of the things that I appreciated, she said she thought she was crazy. She said until I was like, she said I cried a lot, and but
she had it all of her life, or was it something that came later in her life?
Since about 6 years old, she said she heard her first voice, and it was an aunt that had just passed away at age when she was 6, and soon learned that if you talk about that people think you're nuts.
Right.
And when she was probably in her early 20s, she was actually flying up to see a sister of mine in California, and saw a little ad in the the newspaper or the magazine, the airline magazine, and there was an ad about what they call it. It was for a seminar on spiritual guidance. I think that was what the word. And she read it and she said that really sounds like some of the experiences I'm going through. So she called when she got hit the ground and ended up going to the seminar. Said there were 200 people there just like me, and it was the first time I realized I wasn't alone, that I wasn't the only one that was hearing voices in my head. Said my head was for a long time was like a truck stop.
You wonder how, whenever I hear this, because I've met doing the show and had on the show many mediums, with that kind of ability where they hear voices or audio clairant or they're clairistant, they hear the voices like that. Yep. You wonder how many have been misdiagnosed with schizophrenia and or in a mental institution. That's a scary thought, right?
Yeah, and certainly, I think the World Wide Web has provided us with a whole new avenue to talk about and try to explain these sort of extraordinary talents.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I do this show, so people have an open place to talk about it.
Yeah, 25 years ago, she'd have probably ended up in an institution.
Yeah.
By the time she was in her teens.
Does she use her abilities as a professional, or is she just just something she has?
No, she uses it in a professional way.
Yeah.
I mean, not she doesn't hold her. I mean, she doesn't promote herself as such.
Right. It's word of mouth.
Yeah, it's word of mouth. It's an amazing thing that to actually listen to somebody that explain her life from age 6 when her aunts talked to her, that her aunt at the funeral she'd just been at.
Really? I've heard these kind of stories. So what did do you remember what her aunt said to her at the funeral?
Yeah, exactly. She was mad. They went back to the house at, church funeral.
Yeah.
Everybody went back to the house for the reception back then. And she said, I went up in my room and I was mad at God because my aunt was such a nice lady. And why would she take, why would God take my aunt when there's so many bad people in the world? And she said, I heard this voice and it said, don't be mad, or don't be mad at God, or something like that.
Wow.
And she said, I thought it was my mom calling me from downstairs. So I ran downstairs and my mom looked at me like, no, it wasn't me. So I went back upstairs and my aunt talked to me again.
Really?
And this time I was sure of my aunt, and I went down and told my mom, and the other people around, said things like, well, this is the first family member that's ever died and she's under pressure. And
she was 6 years old, or?
Yeah. And she said, I went back upstairs and then I don't remember exactly, but her aunt said something else besides that to her, and that gave her some comfort. But when she went downstairs then again for the last time and told other people about it, she learned at a very young age that you don't talk about it because people think you're crazy.
Yeah.
And so that weighed on her for a long time. And she said, my brain was like, a telephone switchboard. I mean, there were voices everywhere. and they'd come and go, and it was like multiple ones at a time. And
was that her first experience though? Was with her aunt?
Yeah, first experience with the aunt.
See, I've had some mediums have these similar experiences and heard them on TV shows. One of the things I always wonder is when a spirit or a family member reaches out to a child in that kind of situation, is sometimes maybe not wanting to, maybe somehow they open that child up to have it for the rest of their life.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, it's who knows? You know, suddenly, you know, channels are opened.
And kids' perceptions are just different. I, I've said it on my show a million times. I'm sorry, I'll repeat again, but for the conversations, I used to see a little girl I thought was a real little girl, and it turned out to be my unborn half sister. My mom got told this by a really good psychic, like your sister-in-law, who didn't know nothing about my mom, and said, that little girl your son talks to, because I'd always say, my mom would be like, who are you talking to? I'd be like, little girl over there. And I remember she said, that was your unborn, your daughter you miscarried. And I remember the little girl, physical, like she was really there. And see, some kids, I was just seeing a physical little girl. Your sister-in-law, she's with the claristin. She's hearing the voice. She's hearing the voices. I think that's almost worse without seeing it and just hearing voices in your head.
Yeah. She said this seminar, she went to several seminars given by the same man. And she said, it helped me learn to control the chaos.
I bet.
And be able to tamp down these voices, and sort of so that they weren't overwhelming me all the time.
Yeah, you got to imagine that's got to, especially for a child, to keep their sanity. In the world around you is telling you none of that's real, and you're hearing that. Yeah, you have to think you might be insane.
Yeah, and then you wonder how many people,
are locked
basically up. just locked it inside and lived with it, or eventually got driven over the edge by it. I don't know. I mean, it's all speculation, but it certainly was an interesting thing. So the reason I did that was because I needed, as I wrote Cloud Warriors, my character, my protagonist, a anthropology professor named Terry Castro, ends up in a state of animated suspension.
Yeah.
And I needed someone to be able to communicate with him. And that's where my sister-in-law came in. Because even though he wasn't dead, I asked her the question. I said, did you ever were you ever able to communicate with someone who was still alive, but maybe was
in a coma or
legally incompetent, or was in a coma or something? Because that's what I was looking for, in a coma.
Right.
And she said, as a matter of fact, yes. And she told a story about a woman who had dementia, that was actually in the same nursing home with her mother, with my sister-in-law's mother, and was able to communicate lucidly with her, which is,
using her ability.
Yeah.
See, I find that so interesting, coming from having one grandfather who had dementia, severe dementia, and having a grandmother who had Alzheimer's. But the grandmother I saw, the reason I think I saw her after she passed, because my question was, like, if you're in that state, you don't, my grandmother, in her last days, had no idea where she was, what was going on. She recognized me and called me her beautiful boy. That was it. That's the only words coming out of her mouth to me, last words to me. And me and my mother, I both weighed on us after she passed. It's like, what happens to somebody in that state? Are they confused when they move on, whatever? And I think that's why my grandmother came through, is to show me, I'm here, I'm okay. Because that's interesting. She was able to communicate with people, or get their spirit to talk to him. Because it is like, even though they're able to talk with dementia or Alzheimer's, it's like they're gone. It's like a big part of them is missing. It's heartbreaking. And it was really rough for our family, with my grandmother.
My wife lost both her parents to Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And it was, I wasn't close to her dad, but I was to her mom. And it was tragic.
Yeah. I still have nightmares of my grandmother as she was laying in bed with taking her last breaths. And and just thinking about, what she said to me, just my beautiful boy. And that's
My
all she could
beautiful
say.
boy.
She could just recognize that she knew me. And that was it. She could say my name or anything like that. And and the psychic, that they're still there, God, it's like, you wonder what the spirit is doing. If the spirit's aware and is there, and then they see themselves stuck in that. It almost seems even more torturous to think about it that way.
I think that's got to be the worst. The worst if you look at Alzheimer's or another disease that does this is what am I trying? Parkinson's.
Yeah. Oh my
does
God.
this, and you
But
watch.
that's even that Parkinson's, though, the brain is perfectly fine.
It took to a point.
To a point, yeah. But the body is.
And then you start to get the paranoia. And I mean, the paranoia is unattached to reality.
Yeah.
And because you think your partner is trying to kill you or hiding your medicines or whatever. And there's a paranoia stage. And then there becomes a dementia stage. And then you lapse into a stage where,
there's a denial stage that we went through with my grandmother. It was a denial of it.
So you go through that whole thing. But the worst time in either of those, I would think, and I've had some experience with both, is at that point where the person is losing it, but they're still lucid enough to know they're losing it.
Right.
And they can't do anything about it. And it gets to the point where they still can realize that, and they can't even articulate it.
No, I witnessed that. I witnessed that point with my grandmother. One day I was at her house, and she was in the kitchen, and she's holding up a spoon, and she puts it to me, holds it up to me, and goes, "What do you call this?"
Yeah.
I cannot think of what you call this. I'm like, "It's a spoon, Grandma." She's like, "I should know this." That's, you could, I could see the wheels turning, and it's just like, I can't even tell you what this is. And she just sat down and shook her head, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know." She's like, just sat there and "I don't know," and just said that. I was in tears, broke my heart. And I told my wife, if they don't have a cure for it by the time I'm older and it starts happening to me, take me out.
Yeah, pull the plug. I'm with you. I am with you. But that is paranormal. I mean, that is not normal in the way we view normality.
Yeah.
So it's a different facet of a paranormal situation where you get people locked inside a body where their mental capabilities are diminished and eroding.
We've had a guest on several times. It's called the Psychic Profiler, Robbie Thomas, and one of his accounts they shared on the show, and it's in one of his books. Excuse me. He saved a man in a coma. His wife. He was friends with the wife, and she brought him in, and he was able to communicate with the guy in the coma to tell the doctors, "You gave him the wrong drug. You diagnosed him wrong." And sure enough, he saved his life. They did. They gave him the wrong drugs. They were killing him, and they ended up saving his life after they told his wife that he was going to be a goner. And he was able to get this communication. He's communicating with the man who's laying in a coma there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. That's if you wish you could make a common practice out of something like that.
Well, it's acceptance. It's what it is. Yeah. It's more and more people become to realize it, accept it, and it needs to be truly scientifically studied. And we've had parapsychologist Barry Taff on here, worked with UCLA, the parapsychological department. They tested a lot of different things, telepathy and all that, but it needs this, there's just the funding's not there anymore. That was the 60s and 70s, it's like, who's studying this now? Not the ghost hunting TV shows. I don't, like really scientific study of these abilities.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, our government wasn't interested in it. Our government was definitely interested in it. And then we're like, no, we don't, it doesn't work. And then they backed away. Yeah. Right.
They had to deny it publicly. Because it wasn't accepted socially at the time.
but it was getting results. That's what's so crazy. But like if you talk about remote viewing, especially, they were getting results, and they tried to skew those results to make it like, oh, we really weren't getting anything. We're cutting the program, but you know they were, and they cut it, and now it's probably black budget, psychic spies or something like that.
Yeah, it's not
next book.
It's not in a part of the budget that goes through the Office of Management and Budget.
Not anymore. No.
No.
So yeah, in this book, you know, we're going to get into it a little more too after the second commercial break, but I have started reading it, and I find it funny because your main character, this anthropologist, has his university students there with him, and this is in Peru, in the Andes Mountains, right?
Yeah, actually, it's in the rainforest at the base of the Andes. It's an area called the Montaña. When you look at it in print, it looks exactly like Montana.
Yeah,
except it's got the umlaut over the.
And I would call it Montana because I'm a total American jerk. Butchers everything.
Me too. Yeah, but it's the Montaña. The Montaña is 25,000 square miles of rainforest. Right at it encompasses the head of all the waterways that eventually come together and form the Amazon River. And to this day, it has never been completely explored.
Right. That's what I find so interesting about it.
It's an amazing area, but that's where the story. That's the Peruvian part of the story. It's right on the Peruvian Ecuador-Brazil border. This whole area.
Well, I was telling you before the show, I started reading your book. I think I read the first couple chapters one late night, and I'm like, okay, I need a movie to sit back and relax to as I go to sleep. And I'm like, you know what? I'm in the mood for Medicine Man with Sean Connery after I started reading your book, because that's what it was making me think of. Which, you know.
Great movie, by the way.
Great movie, and you know, there you are. You know, he's out there in the Brazilian, you know, in the jungles, you know, discovering the cure for cancer as they just burn it down.
Yeah,
you know, it's really sad in Brazil. I mean, you know, it's there. They got a president now. It's like, yeah, let's burn it all down. Let's move out the tribes.
You know, I just saw something in the news about. It's like, I don't think it was Brazil. It might have been Paraguay or Uruguay, one of those countries that have sort of thrown up their hands and said, "We give up. We're not even going to try to stop them." You know, the demolishing of the rainforest.
That's ridiculous.
They've just politically they've quit. You know, so
well, it might be Brazil because the president that took over there, I can't think of his name. He's a real jerk. is basically like, you know, we need to, you know, stop listening to the climate people. We're gonna burn down the, you know, basically we're gonna, you know, those tribes can be relocated, and we've been catering to them too long, and we need to put roads in, and like, man, go sit down and watch Medicine Man.
Yeah, really. Or go study the history in Australia of, you know,
the Aborigines.
The Aborigines.
Yeah.
Study that history. When, you know, until the 1970s, Australia's official governmental policy was the abolition of the Aborigine
genocide.
Genocide. Go study that history and learn something from it. It's a tragic situation.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, people, you know, in the climate, and we're not getting political here, but, you know, climate lately, lately is, you know, people talking about, you know, slavery in U.S. and what we did. I'm like, yeah, what we did was horrible. But if you know your history about civilizations, there's plenty of other cultures and places around the world where people have screwed over other people, either put them in slavery or tried to commit genocide or did commit genocide. It's history's filled with the bodies of cultures wiped away.
Yeah, the tragic part is that nobody seems to learn from the history.
No, obviously.
I mean, it's still happening today.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, so it's nothing changes. It just keeps coming back around. And that's a generalization, obviously, but
it's sadly the truth, though. It's the truth.
I've been a big fan of a saying I heard decades ago. I wish I knew where it came from. I've tried to look it up. I can't find an author for it, but I'm gonna pretty soon I'm gonna start taking credit for it. But
might as well.
It's a saying that says, "We are who we are because we stand on the shoulders of 1,000 yesterdays."
Oh, I've heard that saying. Now you're going to drive me nuts, Rob. Now I'm going to be like, who said that? Because I've heard that before.
Somebody call in with where that came from, please.
Yeah, call in tonight. If somebody knows that quote, please call in tonight because that's going to drive me nuts because I've heard that too.
I've had that. I don't think it's on there right now, but I've had that on my website multiple times, and I've had it on Facebook. But it's just it's true. But we keep going back and doing the same stupid things.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and over. It's just and you're right. So, what happened in the United States was not unique.
Well, I love The Medicine Man is because in that movie, the woman works for they all work for this pharmaceutical company. And she's like, you found the cure for cancer. We need to bring in the best scientists, bring in all this stuff. And he's like, you want to wipe these people out? She's like, we'll take all the precautions. She's like, yeah, you'll take all the precautions. And then still people are going to die,
Well, they're going to be, that's what, basically, I didn't even think about Medicine Man when I wrote the book, but that in essence is the same story that Cloud Warriors is about. It's pharmaceutical greed versus the survival of a tribe that's been secreted in the rainforest of the Montana for 600 years.
And now they date how do you say the name Chocoa? No. How do you say the name of Choco?
Choco.
And so they would have, what has it been about 600 years?
Well, the Choco were one of several tribes in a conglomeration of tribes that lived right at the top of the Andes Mountains, up in the clouds. And the Incas, who conquered this group of tribes in about, I don't know, somewhere 1400, called them the Chachapoyas, which is a Quechua word that's translated into English is either cloud people or cloud warriors. So the Choco were around for a long time, but they were part of the Incan Empire for about 100 years until Pizarro came along and flipped the script on that. But my story is about a remnant of the Chilco tribe that escapes from the onslaught of the Spaniards and hides away in the Montana for 600 years until being discovered accidentally, really, by a professor leading a summer school program.
Hey, Rob, you hear me?
So that's kind of where the beginning of the story is, and that's a little historical background of
He dropped out.
what got me to write the story.
Hey,
I've been in Peru.
I don't know if you can hear me. Rob, can you hear me?
And I just became really interested.
Let me plug him in again. I don't know if he can even hear me.
I don't think he does.
Using me for a minute there. I was like, I'm sitting here.
He can't hear me.
And architecture is still unmatched today.
I don't know if it's his phone line or it's me. Rob, can you hear me? I can hear him. Barely.
There is the theory that the Machu Picchu, or done a couple of times, was built by aliens.
This sounds really good, but he's really quiet.
Belief still is held by a lot of people, which is really interesting.
Rob, can you hear me?
But it is.
No, he cannot hear
It
me.
was that experience that led me to write this book, basically. My interest in the Incas and the time I spent in Peru.
Rob, can you hear me?
Jason, did I lose you?
Shit. I see I've unplugged them. Let me see if I can hear. Let me just try this. Can you hear me, Rob?
No, now I can. I
Okay.
lost you for a minute.
Okay, something happened with my connection. I actually have you off the speaker right now. We're having technical difficulties. Give me 1 second, okay, Rob?
Okay, got it.
One of those kind of nights.
Yeah.
I know. Can you hear me now, Rob?
Yep, I can.
Okay. I don't know what happened. It's something with my connection. It's not yours. It's a little connector thing I have that went weird on me. You like dropped.
It's not your cat again, is it?
No, my cat's sitting over there looking at me. It wasn't her. She's like, I didn't do it this time.
It's mental telepathy from the cat.
Oh, God. Oh, make my heart hurt. All right. Sorry. You repeat a little bit of what you were saying, because I was hearing you talking about, because you got really quiet. The connection dropped. It was really weird. And you were talking about the alien, a little bit of the alien connection too with Peru.
I'm just saying that there is a theory that is still held by a fair number of people that Machu Picchu was actually built by aliens.
Right.
You raise your eyebrows and you say, yeah, sure. But they point to things like, well, there are stones that had to be moved, scores of miles up mountains,
right,
to get to this location, and then put together in such a fashion that you can't even slide your business card in between.
Right,
the joints.
They're like perfectly cut.
Yeah, and there's no mortar or anything like that. They're just perfectly cut, stuck together. And so it's just, I bring that up only because of the, there is that sort of pervasive thought. And it's that kind of, that sort of interplay of various aspects that got me really, really curious, and then very much involved in studying and learning about the Incan culture, and then
we got the Nazca lines too there.
Yeah.
Which to me are like clear, like, hello aliens, we're here. Like they're so huge. There's no way these people would appreciate their own work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole country of Peru, literally, when you get up past Lima, is terraced, and they built, the mountainsides are all terraced.
Yeah,
and the monuments they built, this prehistoric, they're not, actually prehistoric because they've never written history.
Right.
Culture, the structures they built, and the architecture they did was phenomenal. So that's what got me started on this.
Well, it's got to be very inspiring. The first time you ever went to Peru, it makes anybody probably want to write a book about it.
Oh yeah,
I would love to go.
What really got me started on this one, though, was in my studying of the Incan civilization. When Pizarro had 6 expeditions to Peru, and the first 3 or 4 were utter disasters. I mean, he almost died, and and most of his people died of malaria. They accomplished nothing. But then they through experience and coming back and forth, and then they hit the right time when there was basically a civil war among the Incas. His 2 sons were vying to become the Inca when their father had died, and he caught it at the right time and used European dirty political tricks and gunpowder and smallpox.
To win the day. Biological warfare.
Yeah, to win the day with basically 300 conquistadors, about 75 of which were mounted on horses. That was like the battle wagon of the day.
Well, they were like gods to these people because they didn't have horses.
No, they had nothing to compare it to. So anyway, but in the process, the point I'm trying to get to is that the Catholic Church sent monks along with each of those expeditions to act as the scribes, the historians. They were supposed to keep track of what was going on so they could be reported back home. Well, along the way, somewhere on a couple of these expeditions, these scribes made mention in just like a paragraph of this group of fair-skinned, blonde-haired tribes,
right,
that were part of the Incan Empire. Well, they were the Chachapoyas, and that's what got me curious. And then I started to read about, try to study them, and find out what was written about him, and found out that white, obviously fair-skinned and blonde-haired, and in some cases blue-eyed, don't fit really well in the Incan Empire in terms of what you look like,
or anywhere in South America,
or anywhere in South America. Well, then I learned that there's a group of people called the Namadi in the Moroccan desert that have the same traits, and there is another group in Afghanistan called, I think I've got this right, I think it's the Nuristan, Nuristan, that have the same traits. Now, those are the only three I've found, and they're all in locations, obviously, where fair-skinned and
there's also ones that they found almost mummified bodies in the deserts of China that were fair-skinned, red hair, blonde hair.
Okay.
Too. Then they couldn't identify where they were from, what their culture was. Yeah. So there's cultures out there, there's places out there where fair skin
aberrations.
That don't match the genetics of that area, I would guess.
So, those of us who are from Europe, blame it on the Vikings because they raped and pillaged everywhere.
Yeah, but did they get that far?
Yeah, that's tongue in cheek, but I did run across this is really interesting. In the studying the Chachapoyas, I ran across a picture of a statue, and it's maybe 2.5 feet high. But my God, if it doesn't look like a Viking.
Yeah, I mean, they did I do know they did make it to America for sure.
It just stopped me in my tracks when I saw it, because it looks like. Anyway, I don't know how we got off on that, but nevertheless.
Well, we got to go to commercial break, so we're gonna go to
probably a good time so we can get back on track.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna go to commercial break. When we come back with Rob Jung, we're gonna talk about more about his book Cloud Warriors and the fair-skinned, blue-eyed tribe from Peru. How did they get there? Could they still possibly be there? That's what he explores in his book, Cloud Warriors, the possibility that they could still be in that massive rainforest of ancient culture not touched by civilization. All right, guys, we'll be back, and we'll open up the phone lines when we come back. I'll give those numbers out when we come back to the commercial break. All right, guys, we'll be back with a short commercial break.
Enter the occult world of necromancy.
You were brought here for one purpose: necromancy.
A ceremony dating back to the pre-Christian era. It's the art of reviving the dead. It requires involvement with evil spirits by the person performing the act.
The devil god brings life to the dead.
No, please. No, please.
And death to the living. Necromancy, starring Orson Welles and Pamela Franklin. From Cinerama releasing. In color, rated PG, parental guidance suggested.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDiv.net.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, He has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it. But to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all. But he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
New from Mostly Healthy Foods. Orange Flare Orange Juice. Every glass has a ray of sunshine.
Wow! It has a ray of sunshine in every glass? Father, can I have some?
Sure, son. My God! My face is melting!
Every glass has a ray of sunshine! And yes, it's also a tasty beverage and a high-energy plasma. Sweet Mother of God, close the damn curtain! Oh, how am I still alive inventing this horrible product?
My body is riddled with tumors and the energy to play.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday at the live stream with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do voices from beyond the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Vince, you said before you were waiting for a sign. What sign are you waiting for?
Gozer the Traveler. He will come in one of the pre-chosen forms. During the rectification of the Valdrani, the Traveler came as a large and moving torb. Then, during the third reconciliation of the last of the McKettrick supplicants, they chose a new form for him, that of a giant slore. Many Shubs and Zools knew what it was to be roasted in the depths of the slore that day, I can tell you.
Tonight, our guest is Rob Jung. We've been talking about his book, Cloud Warriors. It's a fictional tale, but it's based off of historical events or people. The actual tribes of fair-skinned, blue-eyed people in Peru. You know, how did they get there? And there's other accounts of these kind of mysterious, fair-skinned, light-skinned, blue-eyed people in other cultures around the world that shouldn't have had those genetics. Where did they come from? You hear ancient aliens bring them up. Could be possibly aliens. I don't know. But it's interesting. Could it have been the Vikings? I don't know. That's what's interesting. But there's other aspects of this story that he has, like a medium being able to communicate with somebody from vast distances is with somebody that doesn't even speak the same language, but able to communicate like on another plane or another level, and communicate with somebody who's in a comatose state as well. And that's where this kind of story we're going to get into, what inspired Rob to learn. You learn from an actual medium how this works, how you can communicate with somebody across vast distances either. That's an interesting topic. Now, you can call in tonight. The phone lines are open. You can call in at 2 phone lines. We got 219-230-4444. That's one way. Or you can call in by Skype ID OOJBland00. Those are 2 ways to call in. Call in. You'll hear us talking. Just wait till we call on you, and we'll bring you on the show. And if I hang up on you, it's because I got somebody else online, so just try again after that caller hangs up. But let's go ahead and get back to our guest. What happened before the commercial break? I'm a little nervous here. Hopefully we got you there. Are you still there with us, Rob?
I'm still here, Jason.
And you hear me?
Yep, I can. I think we're good.
All right, awesome. So yeah, we kind of went down a little rabbit hole there before the commercial break, but I just find it interesting. What I was going to get into, actually, I think led it is the beginning of your book. You have an anthropologist. I thought was kind of funny is starts out with them meeting this tribe. Him and his, I guess, university students that are with him,
right?
Up in the mountains, and what was an arrow that gets shot at them or something like that from this tribe, like a warning shot.
It's actually, they think it's an arrow, but it's actually a blowgun dart.
Oh, yeah. And what I find interesting is that he actually he pokes himself with it, or
well, the arrowhead, which is hammered metal, has very in addition to what you'd think of an arrowhead and the sharp edges, down the sides of the arrowhead are little razor sharp ridges that are not really visible. And he ran his thumb over the side of it and actually cut himself
right
on those ridges. Unfortunately for him, the arrowhead was dipped in curare poison.
Ooh.
And curare poison is an arrowhead poison was used for centuries in Central and South America.
Yeah.
Among most indigenous tribes down there. And the reason it was so popular was that it would get into the bloodstream of the animal or bird or whatever that you shot, and it would paralyze all the voluntary muscles and basically suffocate. The lungs would quit working and they die of suffocation. And the nice part was, because it all worked in the bloodstream, you could butcher the animal and cook it and eat it immediately, as long as you didn't get it in your bloodstream. But once you got it in your bloodstream, you got poisoned the same way the animal did. So if you took it orally and put it through your gastrointestinal system, it didn't hurt you.
You always wonder how these tribes and ancient cultures figured this stuff out, like what was the first guy to decide, let's eat this lobster thing, because it looks like, like not something you're going to really get much out of eat, but lobsters are delicious. Somebody had to discover how to do that. Just like somebody had to discover curare, like, hey, you want to try this meat? Oh, good. You lived that way.
Yeah. Oh, you're the guinea pig.
Right.
Well, curare is a plant-based poison, but literally every tribe had their own version of it, and they would add things to make it more poisonous, and snake venom or poison dart frogs, liquefied stuff like that. So every tribe had its own version of curare. So in my story, my fictional story, the Chilco, over the years, had been blessed by the gods to have this peculiar curare.
It's not your normal curare.
Not your normal curare. But in this case, if the only person who could actually do the curare, make the curare, was the shaman. And the shaman was the only one that got to taste it. And the more bitter the curare, the more potent it was. But in this peculiar curare, if you tasted it, it also extended your life expectancy. While if you got it in your bloodstream, of course, it killed you. The bad news was, and this is part of the story, that if your life expectancy is tripled, as an example. In this case, the average life expectancy of a Chilko was 40 years, but if the shaman lived to be 100, they'd watch their families die over and over.
So then not all the people are taking it, just the shaman.
Just the shaman.
Shaman's a jerk.
or the chosen one,
right?
As the case may be. So in any event, it's an interesting poison. It's actually used in modern medicine, in surgical procedures. Tragically, back around the turn of the 20th century, they thought it was an anesthetic. The other thing about curare is that in its purest form, while it makes all your muscles stop functioning, you can still feel and hear what's going on. So if they're they think it's an anesthetic and they start.
The poor schmo they dried that out on.
To take out your appendix, you can feel it.
I think there's a show called Dark Matter, just to cover like weird things in science and that. And I think there was an episode where they talked about curare and them doing a surgery on this poor person, and they see their tear coming out of their eye, and their eyes just staring up at them like,
that's you can't speak, you can't move.
Oh my God.
And that's how ultimately that story, and whether it's true or anecdotal, I don't know. But that story is how they learned that curare was not an anesthetic, but it is a muscle relaxant, and so it's still used not in a primitive form, but in a pharmaceutical, dust up in some kinds of surgery today.
Oh,
interesting, it's still around.
Yeah. Oh, imagine being, back in the day, you wonder if these tribes just used it on animals or if they did use it on people too, and I don't know, so it's probably, I'm sure there were those situations where it actually did happen. Now your character in the book, he doesn't die. He goes into a coma from it, right?
In this case, the dose is so small that he gets from these little razor sharp edges on this blow dart head, that he does not succumb to the normal situation, but his body is still minimally functioning, but his psyche, his spirit separates from it, and that's when the whole thing gets really interesting.
Well, what gave you idea to like kind of have a medium be like kind of the protagonist kind of in this, and kind of tie this like communication, because what she communicates with him and a shaman, if I understand
it. Yeah. I guess I needed some way to be able to communicate with a character in suspended animation.
Right.
And so that's how I came up with it. And thank God I had my sister-in-law in the family to model it after.
What kind of insights did she give you for this? Like, what were some of the things you learned to help you?
I learned, primarily what I learned is that medium, people who have this gift, I call it a gift. She doesn't. Have
understandable.
This gift, can not only talk to people who are in, on the other side, if you will, who have passed away, but actually can talk to people who are in a coma or in a case where they are no longer lucid. And so it's not, it became possible. As a writer, you're always trying to make sure that what you write is at least plausible.
Suspension of belief or whatever. It can only be suspended so far.
Yeah, there you go. And so what you're looking for is plausibility.
Right.
On Cloud Warriors, I have a retired pathologist who has acted as my medical advisor to make sure that I was not writing anything that if somebody in the medical community read it would say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And you're not looking for medical certainty here, but you're looking for plausibility.
Right.
So that what you write is is at least possible.
But you had to do that with the medium. You want that possibility from her. So the communicating with somebody who's comatose. You've had, like I said, Robbie Thomas on. It was talk about do that, but communicating with somebody who's living thousands of miles away, that's a whole other shebang. Did she give you any kind of insight on that?
She did, but not quite to the extent that I stretched it.
Well, yeah.
But she did. She gave me a couple of insights on that. She said one of the women that she met in this first seminar she went to, where she realized she wasn't crazy, the other woman lives in California. My sister-in-law now lives in Arizona, but they communicate not in the sense like you and I are communicating, or not even in the sense where, like my sister-in-law explained, she communicates with people who are passed away.
Right.
But in a sense that they will almost sense each other. Something's happening in their lives. And my sister-in-law says, I'll get this feeling that, and I don't remember her friend's name, but let's say it's Stacy. Okay. I get this feeling that there's something going on in Stacy's life that's good, or that's bad, or whatever. And then because I have that sense about her, I'll pick up the phone and call her, and we'll talk. And sure enough, my sense will be right. She's done the same to me. So there's that kind of level of communication of somebody who's still alive and who's separated from you geographically.
I've had that experience. Oh yeah.
So that's, and I think most people have.
Yeah. Jamie does it to me. She'll message me and like, are you all right? Like she'll sense if I'm, but she must be getting, I must overload her all the time with all my anxiety, but she messages me all the time. She usually nails it pretty much. I'm like, yeah, it's not a good time.
I think she's texting you right now. I'm watching her. Anyway. So that was one of the things. The other thing, of course, is the shaman in this case that she is communicating with in the jungle, in the rainforest, doesn't speak English.
Right.
So the question becomes can a medium communicate with somebody that doesn't speak the same language that the medium does? And the answer, she said, was, yeah, absolutely. It's like you're communicating in a different dimension, and language isn't important because it's not like you're hearing people say words.
Right.
You are sensing in your head what they're saying, what they're, it isn't like you're having a dialogue like you and I are having.
Right.
It's more of a recognition of that. And she said, I have been asked to and have communicated with people who speak Yiddish, and who have, that was the one she said, I wouldn't have under ordinary circumstances been able to understand what he's saying.
I took 2 years of Spanish and no habla español. That's all I know. I say it. Well, you
don't use it every day.
Right. Well, what always made me fascinated by that aspect of mediums, because I've had, like I said, mediums on the show, and I know mediums. I have friends that are mediums that have communicated with spirits that have passed on that have never spoken English. They've communicated to families for them.
Yep.
So they're obviously communicating on some level. Also, you have to wonder back in pre-human, before civilizations of humans, Cro-Magnon man, even, how humans communicated with each other. And there's some aspect of us we've lost that we used to have, where we communicated more on a telepathic level with each other because it was necessary for survival. Sure. You think of the Bible and the Tower of Babel. At one time, we all spoke the same language, and then the Tower of Babel falls, and and everybody spread out and has to speak different languages. Well, that might be based on something that happened in our past where we did split, but we used a part of us that we don't use anymore, this telepathic sense.
Yeah, well, Jason, I think that we still do. I think I think that we still do. I'll give you a true story that I've witnessed and an anecdotal story. I don't know if it's right or true or not. The true story is many years ago, back in the 1980s, my family usually had big Thanksgivings, 30, 40 people. And we'd invite friends who didn't have any place to go. And this one year, we invited a family that had just arrived about 2 months earlier from Ethiopia, right in the middle of the biggest Ethiopian famine in '84.
Oh, yeah.
And they had mom, dad, and a little 4-year-old boy. And mom didn't speak any English. Dad, very broken. Little boy and other kids of that age had no trouble communicating whatsoever.
Right.
They communicated through the language of play, and they didn't worry about any of that. Now, that's the true story. So I think we all did that at one point in time.
Right.
The anecdotal story is this one I've heard. And the anecdotal story is this. A story about a 3-year-old girl who's standing next to the crib of her like 6-month-old brother, saying out of earshot of mom and dad, she thinks, but they're overhearing it on a monitor.
Yeah.
And let's say the little girl's brother's name, the baby was named David. And she's saying, David, can you remind me how God talks? Because I can't hear him anymore.
Oh, wow.
Now, is that a true story? I don't know, but I remember that story from 40 years ago.
Somebody told you that story, and
Somebody
it just
told me
stuck
that
with you.
Story, and it stuck with me.
That's going to stick with me.
Yeah.
I'd love to know the source of that, because that sounds, yeah. Well, you know, I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old boys.
Yeah.
And since my youngest Liam, you know, started to jibber jabber, you know, my son Dean would seem to translate it better than we would. You know, like it's like, no, he wants the, he still does. I'm like, what are you saying? And my older son will be like, he's saying this. Don't you hear him? I'm like, no, it sounds like jibber jabber, him having a fit. I can't understand a word he's saying, but somehow my 8-year-old will.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think we still do it. It's just that we, in all our wisdom and age, we have drifted away from it. So.
Well, you have those. I don't know if it was a couple of years ago. We had on our World Wide Web a weird news segment. It was the twins that could they invented their own language, like pretty much talking to each other. And then they said it had aspects that sounded like Farsi or something other language. It makes you think of reincarnation.
Yeah, really.
You know,
that's fascinating. You know, Jason, this has got absolutely nothing to do exactly with what we're talking about, but it's kind of along the same lines. And I'm sure you have. I've been, you know, I've traveled a lot. I've been panhandled everywhere, and you know, by you know, organizations and by individuals, and you know, occasionally I'll, you know, fork over some money. Most of the time, you just kind of blow it off. I was in New York City in the mid-1980s, and this is how long it stuck with me. And I was working at a legal deal, dealing with sales of some fairly substantial real estate there, and was working with a local law firm. And about 11 o'clock one night, we got done, and these guys had to go back to the island to live, but they said, let's stop and get something to eat. So we did. We stopped, and on our way out of this restaurant, as they were heading back for the subway, and I was going back to my hotel, there was a young black man, and that's not important, but he was dressed in a leather jacket and jeans, and he panhandled me. He was standing basically in the street, and I was the.
You make it sound so dirty.
Well, yeah. Well, the street was dirty.
They're right.
But so he asked me for something, and I blew him off. You know what? That one has haunted me. It's like I missed an opportunity. It's always made me think. What was special about this one out of all the people that I have not given to that have panhandled me, that this one has just haunted me. And it's strange. Anyway,
something like telepathic,
yeah.
Or
yeah. It's what did I miss here?
Maybe he was trying to. Maybe you wonder. Some people, for survival, the abilities they will discover they have in them, ancient abilities like mind control. There are no droids here. Like a Jedi thing. Well, there's I can't think of the psychic's name, but there's a credible tale of a psychic from Russia, and Stalin had him, gave him some tests to prove himself.
Oh.
Like one was walking to a bank, and he gives a note to the teller, but it's not like, give me all your money. It's like, it's an official check, but it's just a blank piece of paper. And he's like imaging it into her mind to give him the money. And he literally gets the money and walks out. Another one, he walks right into Stalin's like guarded fort and walks past all his soldiers. And I remember from this story, and it's been on documentaries and stuff like that, and I've read about it, that he projected the image of one of Stalin's top lieutenants into all these minds as he walked past them. So they all just accepted he was that guy and walked through. Like that could be that ability to its extreme, and
yeah.
For
Never
people
thought about that aspect of it. I always felt it was like a test, and I failed.
Because you didn't talk to him?
Well, because I didn't respond. I mean, it was just like, and it wasn't like he looked like a pauper and he looked like he was really in need of the money, but it just left me. Your Russian thing reminds me of Rasputin.
Oh yeah,
back in the time of the czars.
Oh, that's an interesting character. It would be novel worthy. A character put in a novel, Rasputin. I mean, he's been in a lot of different stories. But how more interesting can you get than Rasputin? We do have somebody on the phone line that's been waiting. Let's get him on.
Okay.
We got Zach on the line. How you doing tonight, Zach?
I'm feeling pretty good, my man. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for calling in.
Okay. I have one question, but it's a multiple part question. Rob, hey Rob, very nice to meet you, man.
Hi, Zach.
So there's several questions really come to mind when I think of of tribes really that have no contact with the outside world whatsoever. And the biggest questions that I have are related to population control as well as anything along the lines of like genetic disorders or diseases. So my question goes back over to this pale skin tribe that was mentioned earlier. My question to you is, what would be the rough population account maybe for the members of this tribe? And also,
that's a good question.
How have they survived so long without being subject to things, different genetic disorders as a result of like inbreeding, for example? And really, do they have maybe the same kind of immunity to a lot of diseases that we do now, or are they maybe a little bit more advanced than us, or maybe are they subject to getting a lot of other diseases that we are immune to right now, like
a lot
polio,
of questions
for
in
example.
there. Well, let's
Zach,
Rob get to that. So
those are interesting questions, actually. To be quite specific with respect to my story, the Chilco remnant had dwindled in population. And at the time of the story, it was down to about 200. One of the characters that arises through the story had the successor shaman, if you will, had 3 children. And that was one of the reasons he was held in such awe, was because he had 3 children, and it was so unusual to have multiple children in this tribe. The issue, I didn't really address the issue of inbreeding and the genetic problems that could create, but I dealt with it more in the sense that this tribe was shrinking over time, and it was down to 200 people at the time of this story, and recognizing the difficulty of maintaining a population, a very small population of people in a environment that is that difficult,
and to stay hidden.
And to staying hidden wasn't all that tough.
True.
I mean,
a lot of space.
Literally, a lot of space. 25,000 square miles, and the only real transportation mode in that 25,000 square miles is waterways. And if you are if you are away from the waterways at all, if you live away from, or at least keep yourself secluded from the waterways, people aren't going to find you. So the hidden part wasn't so hard. The survival of this group for 600 years was very much a challenge, and that is precisely. You raise great questions, Zach. I mean, it's.
Yeah, he always does. But one of the examples, Zach, I would like to give too is there. I mean, of course, my memory doesn't serve me right here where it is, but it was just in the news last year or the year before about the guy who got killed by that isolated tribe on an island. Remember that, Rob?
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah, and they've been isolated for a long time. I mean,
yeah,
and they have a population genetically. Obviously, it's still working out for them.
Yeah, you don't know how many Edwards there are in that group, but I don't know that anybody's ever made a study in a situation like that for a secluded tribe to find out how.
Well, I'm sure anthropologists want to, but you don't want to destroy the tribe by trying to. It's it's that conundrum of science and study. You affect what you observe. Well, thank you, Zach, for calling in.
Absolutely, brother, and thank you so much, Rob, for answering my questions. I greatly appreciate it, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for your question. They were very intriguing.
All right, have a great night, Zach. All right, we got somebody else on the line. We got Mike on the line, I think, coming on now. You there with us, Mike?
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Thanks for calling in. You got a question for our guest tonight?
Yeah, am I on or?
You're on. You're live.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was talking about language. Language and how we develop. Do you hear a fan in the background?
I do a little bit.
Oh,
and echo. You got.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, extinguish thy radio.
Okay, I got the YouTube is on.
Yeah, turn it off.
Okay, there. Now I just got you.
Extinguish thy YouTube.
YouTube is muted, and then I got you on Skype. So
okay, you're good.
Okay, there's one little fan still. Let me hold on.
I hear you fine. You're fine, Mike. Just go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, all right. Here it is, real quick. So we all we have communication language. Well, there's tons of different languages, but I believe in the spirit world that I'm not psychic, or we all have the ability though to be psychic. They claim, we all have the ability to do this, and if you're exposed to spirit for like a long time, you're doing research, you sort of like begin to develop a communication with them, even though somebody else can be here listening to like the radio moving through the sequences, milliseconds, of forward and reverse. But I think over time you could develop a communication and, with the spirit. And I thought that came to mind when he was talking about developing a communication with spirit. Rob, you feel me, Rob?
Yeah. I'm looking for the question in there, Mike.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. What's the question, Mike?
Well, did you develop like a language or a communication, type of with the spirit? Did you develop a communication?
Are you asking if he's gained his own kind of little bit of psychic abilities, learning from his sister-in-law, or doing this? Is that what you're asking, Mike?
Yeah, like he was talking about speaking with people in comas, and that's remarkable.
Well, that's not him. That was his sister-in-law that inspired his character. Yeah. But hey, it's a good question though. Have you picked up you think any little bit of psychic ability just learning from her?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you, Rob.
No, okay, I'm sorry. I wish the answer was yes, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, I think that
some people are just gifted.
It's a gift I don't have.
Or curse.
Yeah, in some cases, I think maybe that's true. But I think that the language, what I learned from her, And I think this holds relatively true for most mediums, is that language is not a barrier.
Right.
It is, they don't speak or they don't communicate with spirits or with people in comas or whatever, based upon a language that we, as we think about it, they communicate almost in a completely different dimension. And where, like the Tower of Babel, you brought it up earlier,
right?
The language doesn't matter. It's just there is an ability that's part of the gift, I guess, to be able to communicate with people, no matter what, in their human form, what language they spoke.
Well, yeah, I always go back to, like, Clan of the Cave Bear. I think of, what did people use to communicate? They had to survive. They had to communicate. So there's probably something built in us that worked beyond language at some point. Hey, Mike, thanks for calling in, bud.
Yeah, thank you. You guys almost reminded me of the disciples with Jesus Christ when the Holy Spirit came upon them in Pentecost. They were able to, speak every language under the sun. It was amazing. But go ahead. So thank you. Thank you very much.
You have a great day.
Yeah.
Night. Stay. New day. Some places. But, it brings up a point too. A lot of psychics, when you hear them talk about how they communicate, it is, I've had some psychic experiences in my life, and I had an experience where if I had a little voice in my head talking, but it was almost like more like I could hear it was my own inner voice talking to me, but it was giving information I just shouldn't have known. But there's also those times where it's like just an instant knowing, like they're able to convey information in an instance of knowing.
Yeah.
And then visual too. You hear psychics say, "Oh, I see a symbol of a red rose, and it means an anniversary," or something like that. Like they find the language that the psychic will understand, like symbols and stuff, to communicate. They can't just directly talk to them. You hear a lot of psychics communicate that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't pretend to have a lot of experience with psychics, but since I wrote this book, and since I learned from my sister-in-law, I have had communications with others, and it just seems to me that what I hope I'm understanding is that the type of communication is almost inexplicable in words, because we have language, and language is limiting, and their communication seems to be much more open-ended.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not restricted by the parameters of language, no matter what language it is. It's almost, it's one of I always think of three-dimensional chess for some reason when they talk about that, because I played chess my whole life, and I still can't comprehend that third level down on how to play three-dimensional chess.
I don't either. I'm just trying to do, the two-dimensional chess with my son, who is, learning how to play chess and plays in chess tournaments. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm a big Star Trek fan. I love when they watch them. You get the three-dimensional chess with Kirk and Spock. I'm like, how do you do that?
Well, plus, how do you do it with the characters that beat each other up? I mean, I like that part.
No, that's Star Wars. That's Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh, that's Star Wars.
Yeah,
sorry. Okay, wrong one.
It's all right, but that's a cool one too.
Yeah.
But you wonder, the other incident seems really similar to this too. We've had guests on who've been alien abductees, and they talk about how aliens communicate with them is a lot of times this telepathic communications. That they're either hearing their voice in their head, or they're getting this instant knowing, or getting visuals, or all the above. The way that they communicate, if we were ever to travel into space and have like a Star Trek universe, we meet other aliens, I don't know if we're gonna have a universal translator. We might need to learn how to be telepathic again.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, isn't it? After all the things that have changed in the world during our lifetimes, it is not beyond the comprehension that we could, in very short term, be able to communicate telepathically.
Now, one of the aspects of your story too is this kind of fountain of youth of the Karari. It keeps them alive for a long time. It reminds me of the search for the fountain of youth, kind of.
Sure, it is a fountain of youth story.
Yeah, and you think back, and we get back to the biblical references back, some of the characters in the Bible that lived for like 900 years.
Yeah.
You wonder if there is something out there. Did that kind of influence you is this be the main Maltese Falcon of the story, kind of like the main proponent of the story? Is this elixir of life?
Well, I mean, it was the driving force behind why the pharmaceutical. You got to understand, I guess, a little backstory that the story itself, Cloud Warriors, is my fictional rant against the greed of the pharmaceutical industry. So I hope that none of you that are on this show are part of that pharmaceutical industry greed.
I don't care if they are, because I have the same feelings you do about them.
Yeah, but that's really I've felt for a long time that you could raise issues by writing fiction and get a actual dialogue going on these issues,
right?
Without the animosity that and the confrontationalism that if you were going to just discuss this in a non-fictional sense, you'd get.
Yeah.
So you can raise it as fictionally, and you can use it as a discussion point or a teaching mechanism or something. And that's what I was doing with this book, was trying to raise the level of the dialogue about the issue of pharmaceutical greed and how it impacts our healthcare system and the cost of the medical system and all this sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's done. You'll see more of it as you get deeper into the book. But it is done in this fashion because I think people will talk about it that way. And the fact that we have this substance now that has the ability to be a life extender. I mean, can you imagine the frenzy that would send the pharmaceutical companies?
Oh my God.
And so I concocted, that's a bad word. I conjured a way to make it plausible. I don't know if you've got to the part yet about how the curare and the magic substance that is in this particular curare came about.
No.
You haven't gotten there yet.
No.
It's a fascinating story because it is while it's fiction, it is one of those plausible things again. And it has to do with the migration of the Arctic tern from Siberia to the Andes Mountains every year.
Oh.
And a plant that is grown called ashwagandha that is grown in this particular area of Siberia, where there are some villages where the average life expectancy is like 104.
I think I've heard of this. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I take that whole thing and I use the Arctic tern to get it to the Andes Mountains by depositing the seeds of the ashwagandha they ate before they, that sort of thing. So again, plausibility and trying to get that done. And that's how the Chilco and the whole group conglomeration of tribes ended up with this special kind of curare, this special one that had the only one that had this one plant substance in it that provided the life extending quality.
Well, we got somebody else waiting on the phone line I want to get to before we go to our last commercial break. We got 860 area code. Who do we got on the line?
Hey, it's Adrian from Connecticut. Hello.
Hi, Adrian. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, it's funny. This is a synchronicity. I had a question, and then your guest began talking about pharmaceuticals, which brought another question up. I thought to myself, what's the life expectancy of this clan? In the fair-haired, light-skinned clan. So that's one question. But my original one was this tribe of 200. I assume they have their own creation story explaining how they came to be. And I was wondering if your guest thought it was possible their creator tucked them away in a secluded location for safekeeping of their genetics. Or is there another theory or explanation?
It's fictional. It's a fictional story. So, but his idea is the possibility that they could still be alive out there in that rainforest, which is a possibility, right, Rob? I mean, it could be possible. There could be these remnants of these tribes in the forest.
Oh, I it certainly is possible. You just mentioned one earlier, Jason, about this tribe on this island,
right?
That's survived for centuries before somebody from our civilization tripped over them and got in trouble with them. But the answer to your question,
it's all right. It's all right.
Adrian, those are good questions.
They are good questions.
The life expectancy of the tribe, and I put it in the book itself. The average person lives to be 40.
It's the shamans.
In our years.
It's the shamans that live
except for the shaman, who are the ones that are by tradition allowed to mix the curare and provide it to the community. And the way you test, and this is historically a fact, the way you test the potency of curare is you taste it. And the more bitter it is, hypothetically, the more poisonous it is. And you can taste it because as long as it doesn't get in your bloodstream, it doesn't hurt you. It's when so if it's in your GI tract, you're fine.
But
If it gets in your bloodstream, it suffocates you, kills you.
Wow.
So that's the story. As far as a creation story,
spectacular.
And that's all historically accurate. As far as the creation story for the Chachapoyas, of which the Chilco are one, I'm sure they had one, but in my research on this group, I haven't come across anything. Remember, they have no written history, so you're going by the remnants that the archaeologists find of their culture, and they had deities and all that sort of stuff, but I don't really know what their creation story was.
I hope more facts come out about who we really are, who they are, and our origins. I think there's a lot more to this story, and it sounds like a truly interesting subject you've tackled. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in.
I certainly think that we are sort of scratching the surface of this sort of thing of creation and possibility, and what the cosmos really is composed of from a intelligence level.
As somebody who's tried to write, and I have my plenty of dead novels I wouldn't let the public ever see. I'm very impressed by this book. Like I said, I just started reading it, but what do you draw upon when you're writing about a culture like that you don't have all that information about, that it's been lost to time, and how do you invent the way their culture is and the way they act and talk, I guess are characters in your book?
I think I couldn't, at age 40, I couldn't have written this book. I think a lot of it has to do with my experience of just living long and of traveling a lot and being a student of history and being really curious about other cultures. The truth of the matter is, with the web, you can do a lot of research on.
Oh no, it happened again.
Life in this area of the Amazon.
Hold on a second.
But in terms of culture, and it is mostly my imagination based upon my experience.
Hold on a second. We lost him. I'm gonna bring him back. Hold on, Rob. You hear me? No, it's something with the phone. He's talking.
We're all having technical issues tonight.
Yeah. Let me see if this reconnects.
It's like forget it's fiction, and I'm just making it up. But it must seem realistic to the people who are reading.
Unless it's something with his headset.
So it's mostly experience and imagination.
Can you hear me, Rob? All right, hold on. Let me see. This worked last time. You hear me, Rob? Hold on. Let's see. Speaker. Last time I switched it back and forth, but I don't think it's my phone. You hear me, Rob? Okay. All right. Okay. I was switching back and forth what I did last time to make it work. I'm going to have to plug you back in. Hold on a second, okay?
Okay.
Wow. Give it a second. All right. Do you hear me, Rob?
I got you now.
Okay. That's so weird. This time it didn't work right away, the fix. And so
Blame it on the cat.
Yeah, it's weird. It just goes out. We can hear you lightly talking, and then, but you can't hear me at all.
I can barely hear. I can't even make out. I can hear a voice that I know is yours, but I can't make out the words.
But you hear me now,
Anyway,
though.
I can hear you now.
Okay, you hear me now. Well, what we were getting at, yeah. What I found, like I said, interesting is when you have to build, about a civilization like that, and you have just a little bit. How much do you think? They were the Incans took them over, but in your research, how far back do you think they might have gone as a civilization before the Incas?
Well, I think they predated the Incas,
right?
By probably multiple centuries. This was an interesting group that most of which we know about is because of two things. One is the little bit that was written about them by these monks that were with Pizarro, and the rest of it is through the archaeologists. It is apparent that they were not a homogeneous tribe. It was a cluster of, confederation really, that's found a way to survive together. But it was also their demise because they apparently, once the Incas, set their sights on the top of the Andes Mountains, they didn't put up much of a resistance. They fell pretty quickly, so
they probably weren't a warrior tribe.
They didn't appear to be a warrior tribe,
right.
Although they built some huge citadels. There's one called Tulap that looked. And it's hard to know. It's like Machu Picchu. Nobody's really sure what the purpose of Machu Picchu was.
Right.
There's a lot of different ideas, but this is a citadel that looked like it. It could have been a fortress. It could have been a university. It could have been, a
temple,
king's castle. A temple. A lot of things it could be. But it is, probably outside of Machu Picchu. It is probably the most awesome structure in Peru.
Did you get to go see it, or when you were there, or?
I did not, unfortunately. I've seen pictures of it, but I didn't get into that portion of Peru when I was there. I would love to go back and actually see these things.
Well, last week's guest we had on was about the pyramids, and one of the things we kept on going around, going around and talking about, coming back to, is the idea that there was some kind of pre-civilization, like the Atlantis kind of idea, that when it collapsed, all the people from that civilization spread out across the world. Maybe the Tower of Babel, where these things come from, and that that might be why we find these remnants of these societies, like a civilization like that looks different than what was around there, because they were the ones who migrated from that fallen civilization. That brought that tech.
Have you ever had anybody on that talked about the lost civilization of Zimbabwe?
No.
That's another just fascinating story. A culture without a written, language that existed long before Rhodesia, Rhodes, and where the name, of Rhodesia that turned into Zimbabwe came from now. But it is a story of a civilization that basically disappeared and left temples and the architectural things, and nobody's quite sure why, except it looks from their archaeological findings like it was a huge, powerful force in the middle of Africa. back probably about the time of Christ. So
there's a number of civilizations that seem to disappeared around that time. You know,
you wonder what happened.
And South America has quite a few of them that have disappeared.
Yeah.
You know, is it disease or did they go up in a spaceship as ancient aliens? Ancient aliens, or theorists believe.
It was almost like they went out of creation, like the dinosaurs.
Right, they just disappear. But there's, I mean, there's even there's one in China that, the Chinese were really good about documenting and writing everything. But there's even a civilization there that archaeologists discovered, I can't think of the name of it, that were not documented, not written down by the Chinese, that they should have, but here they are. Here's their weird statues that look like bat-like, goblin-like creatures and stuff like that, they can't explain, why the Chinese would not document any of this civilization, even, any artifacts from it, because they were very meticulous, as a civilization, to always write down and document, their culture. So there's a lot of evidence that something, that we don't, there's so much more we need to know about our past. And we've had Dr. Heather Lynn, an archaeologist, on the show. It talks about just the way it works, and with anthropology and archaeology and these universities that just don't want to have an open mind to things, don't want to even look back at their own theories that can be totally proven to be crap, especially when it comes to like Egypt. In Egyptology, that they don't, they have to keep these you have to wait for the people at the top of the universities to die off before you can get any kind of openness or information on it. And that's sad, because there's so much history, so much stuff we just don't know. We're going to go to our last commercial break here. When we come back, phone lines will still be open. I'd like to talk to you a little bit of your idea of this elixir of life that make people live longer. I'd like to explore with you the idea of what would happen if we actually had something like that. What would the greedy pharmaceutical companies do? I have some ideas. I bet you do too. We'll get back to that when we come back from this short commercial break.
Okay.
Intercepted transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
Again, this is the USS Montana requesting that you immediately divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. Over.
Please divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid collision.
This is Captain Hancock. You will divert your course. Over.
Negative, Captain. I'm not moving anything. Change your course. Over.
I'm sorry. This is the USS Montana, the second largest vessel in the North Atlantic Fleet. You will change course 15 degrees north, or I will be forced to take measures to ensure the safety of this ship. Over.
This is a lighthouse, mate. It's your call. Hello, Captain? I think he's gone. Fair enough.
For every Earthling who's ever dreamed of adventures beyond the stars comes the astonishing story of one who made it, Alex Rogan.
You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Sur and the Kodan Armada.
Of all the life forms in all the galaxies, one has been chosen to be the last Starfighter. The Last Starfighter, with the film of the #1 hit Do They Know It's Christmas, the official Band-Aid story. In the West End and across London now, rated PG.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
Tired of school?
Who was Joan of Arc?
Noah's wife? Like to travel?
Let's go back into history. Let's reach out and touch someone.
Want to meet people in the past?
Put them in the Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden? Excellent! Execute them. Bogus.
Then hitch a ride with George Carlin, Keanu Reeves, and Alex Winter in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure from Orion Pictures.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do voices from beyond the cold case files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate. All those moments will be lost in time. Like tears in rain. Time to die.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, we've been talking to author Rob Jung, author of Cloud Warriors and The Reaper. We're going to I would definitely want to get into what his other books are about, because some of them sound really interesting, especially the one about, I think he's got an upcoming one about Ireland and burning of witches. That's always an interesting topic. We should talk about that before we leave tonight. But you can still call in. The phone lines are open. You can call in at 219-230-4444 or Skype ID 00JBland00. That's 219-230-4444 or Skype ID 00JBland00. Call in. Have a question for Rob, or you even I don't know, we're still looking at who said that quote he made earlier. We might have to give that quote again, see if anybody that's in the chat room might know who that is. I want to see Einstein. I want to get that quote again. I got to look that up. But let's go ahead and get back to our guest. You still there with me, Rob?
I am, Jason.
Yeah, all right. And you hear me?
Yep, I do.
Say that quote again. What was that quote again?
Oh, the quote?
Yeah.
We are who we are because we stand on the shoulders of 1,000 yesterdays.
I want to say it was Einstein, but I'm probably way off. credit everything to Einstein. If anybody knows, call in tonight. Let me know or say it in the chat room. I'll post it up here, but I'm curious. Now, we get back to, kind of the premise of your book too, is the evils of the pharmaceutical companies. I hear you. I mean, just recently, and I'm not trying to get into politics, but the Trump administration tried to get, I don't know if it's an executive order or whatever, that try to make pharmaceutical companies basically have to tell you the cost of prescriptions. But man, they got a judge to shut that down. Real quick,
in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's the power of the pharmaceutical company, and that some judge out there would just shut that down too. I mean, maybe they found some legal right, whatever, but just the amount. There's that one little punk that worked for pharmaceutical companies. What was his name? He was always on live streaming and stuff. I would see him when I was on this thing called Blab. Basically raised the price of a drug to like $600.
Oh yeah.
To make a buck. This is the kind of stuff that they do. Imagine what they would do if they got their hands on something that would extend your life by 40 years or 50 years.
Well, yeah. And I mean, this is just an example of the kind of drug that would have such a monstrous impact on society in general. For one thing, let's assume that the pharmaceutical companies were going to market this on a mass basis to everybody. Can you imagine what the infrastructure of this country would have to be to support that?
There'd be a society, a higher class that could afford it.
Well,
that would live a lot longer.
Thing. Yeah, that's what it would be. Other thing. Yeah, they'd make it available to a select few, the 1% of the 1%, and become basically godlike.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They make them gods of society. I mean, imagine I can't imagine Kanye West getting something like that and have to listen to his music another 40 or 50 years. God, or I could name like 100 other artists.
That's pretty scary, isn't it?
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah. I don't want to hear you anymore.
Something like that. But it is it's twofold. One is how it would disrupt society if you did the marketing to a select class, or how it would destroy society as we know it if you made it available across the board. I mean,
right.
So you're going to get the pharmaceutical company that's going to have the patent for 17 years on it, and for 17 years you're going to have the elite having it, and then it's going to fall out, and then everybody and their cousin is going to sell it at a nickel for everybody, and suddenly we have
black market stuff.
We have everybody living to 150.
They already can't pay the pensions in Illinois.
Yeah, really. Well, keep in mind that Social Security.
Oh yeah.
The Social Security age at 65 was set at a time when the average life expectancy was 60. So they were figuring that 65 was safe.
Right.
Well, with the medical advancement and better nutrition, look where we are now. We've outlived the whole program is designed. Well, double the life expectancy from 75 to 150, and try to think how society's going to cope with it.
The medical industry would love it, because I mean they make a lot of money off of elderly care, and I'm saying get those elderly people to live longer. The hospice care alone, all that stuff. They have a lot longer to milk people for.
Yeah, and how many of us who are at that kind of retirement age would have enough resources set aside to live an extra?
I hear it on the radio all the time, have you saved enough for your retirement? I'm like, man, I'm going to die. I'm a retail manager. I'm going to die at 104 on the sales floor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the way most of us are at this stage.
I have no hope of seeing Social Security or having a retirement that can survive the economy, Yeah.
I hear you talking. It's a real problem. It's an ethical problem, and I raise the ethical problem in the story through the two ways. At the end, it becomes that question comes clearly into focus. But during the story itself, the issue is raised by the young man who was who is to become the next shaman. And he faces the problem of saying, I have 3 kids and a wife, and I don't want to live, I don't want to see them die. I don't want to be here when, or live way beyond them and watch not only them, but maybe my next family, like my father's had to. So it becomes a real issue.
Their culture, only the shaman is allowed to live that long. They know that it helps them live longer, but it's only the shaman. That's how they keep their population in check. The shaman's the pharmaceutical company.
That's right. It's the shaman is like the Inca. The shaman is the deity. The pharmaceutical company, as you say, he is the source of all knowledge, and that's fairly common in societies that don't have written languages.
Yeah.
It's done through word of mouth, and the word of mouth is that has the knowledge are usually the elders, and in some cases the chosen elders
or the religion. Before the pharmaceutical companies, there was religion.
Oh yeah. Every society has had some higher power that that's what convinces me that there is a higher power. There is what we call God, because there has not been a organization of humans in all of written history that hasn't had one. So there's obviously there's a great old now much long deceased German theologian that had another phrase that I've always thought about, and he said, in every human being there is a God-shaped void that needs to be filled.
Niche nerd. Wow.
Yeah, an interesting concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's borne out by history.
Well, atheists use that as an excuse of why we make up God, though. But I think my personal opinion would be, I'm an agnostic, not an atheist. I believe in a higher power. I just question what we call it or what it is or anything else about it, but I believe in it.
I question organized religion.
Oh, yes.
That's man-made, subject to all the foibles and failings of mankind. Anyway, that's a whole different story.
Well, it again, like I said before, pharmaceutical companies, there was religion. That was the medicine of the day. You prayed to get better. You tithe to that religion to heal you. So I mean, they were kind of the pharmaceutical company of their day.
Interesting, in today's modern medicine, there's a trend among the medical community that says, people of faith have a much better, people of prayer have a much better chance of survival or, of recovery. So it's an interesting concept, whether it's that or whether it is some sort of
mind
positive makeup. Positive makeup that creates, that does that sort of thing.
Yeah, being hopeless, like you have cancer, there's no cure in you, and you don't believe in a God or anything that's going to save you. Pretty much the gig's up for you. But if you believe in God and have prayer circles for you, it gives you some kind of hope. It keeps the body like, I have a chance,
Yeah.
So, but I believe in the power of the consciousness and the of multiple consciousnesses coming together and affecting reality. I really think that's a big power. I mean, look at all the people who believe in magic and spells. I believe it works. I believe the power of consciousness.
I think that there are I don't disagree with you at all. I think there are so many, back to the levels of intelligence, whether it is intuitive intelligence or measurable intelligence. We don't even have a clue how broad and deep that is at this stage of the game. So I think that those who doubt, those who put down or belittle this, you can call it paranormal, you can call it whatever we want. The fact is that they are the ones with the blinders on, and they are cutting themselves off from the possibility of much greater things.
Well, that's what amazes me about scientists some of the scientists are just so skeptical of all this, anything, outside the realm of what they they have in their books and what reality is to them. They can't like open their minds to the, it's like, you're a scientist, your mind should be open to all these possibilities, but they're just as dogmatic as a religion is.
Good word. Yeah, it's just a different kind of religion.
Yeah,
But actually, atheism is a different kind of religion.
It is.
Too.
Yeah.
So it is, I don't know. It's really more of a comment on the human psyche than anything else.
Now, I read a little bit about you have another book called the Reaper. Is that it?
Yep. Yeah. The Reaper is a different kind of book. It is historical fiction in the sense that it is based upon a historical event, but it is a historical event that is rolled forward then and shows how it impacts lives today. It's based on it's a historical mystery, if you will. And it's the first of a trilogy.
Really?
The Reaper is based on a painting by a famous Catalan/Spanish artist named Joan Miró that he painted in 1937 that disappeared and has never been found.
So this is a real artist, real painting that never has been found.
Yep, all of the above. And the first part of the book is my historical, fictional historical take on what happened in the last week of November of 1937, when the Paris World Exposition was coming to a close, where this painting hung, and where the competing interests for the painting, who they were and what they were trying to accomplish. And then it leapfrogs forward to 2009, and how this missing painting still plays a role in the life of a struggling artist from St. Paul, Minnesota, and his estranged mother. And it goes on from there, and it turns into murder and mayhem and all those other great things that make mysteries, readable.
Historical mysteries, especially.
Yeah,
are very readable. I love that. I love that.
So that's what the Reaper's about. I'm writing the book called The Sower, which is the sequel to the Reaper, and the second of what will be a trilogy. But the next book after The Sower is done is the one you referenced earlier called First Witch, which is based on a story that I've stumbled on when I was in Ireland a couple of years ago.
So I have a lot of Irish background. One of the first places, if I won a bunch of money and I could go travel, I want to go to is Ireland.
Oh God, I love Ireland. The people are great. It is impossible to go to an Irish pub, sit down at a bar, order a beer, and not have a conversation started with the people around you by the time you get the beer about a third finished. They're the friendliest people, and they love to talk. They love Americans, and
that's where I get my talking from, is my Irish background.
There you go. It's a great place. But anyway, there's a place in Kilkenny called Keitler's Inn, and that's where the story arises. And the central part of the historical thing is the woman named Alice Keitler, who was the innkeeper, and she became the innkeeper after she poisoned her husband.
What?
And ended up with it was the fourth husband she poisoned.
And this is a true story that you learned?
Yep. And this is at least, if it's not true, it's a great, anyway. So supposedly after she poisoned each husband, she got richer. And after this one, she ended up with Keitler's Inn, which was quite a famous place apparently. But the Irish church looked askance at her behavior, as you might imagine.
Right.
And prosecuted her as a witch in absentia. It was like Inquisition without her present.
When was this? When did
this is 1310.
Okay.
And Alice Keitler was a dame, which is like minor royalty, and she had friends in high places. And so when the church descended upon Keitler's Inn to arrest her, to have her burned at the stake, she was spirited away by powerful people who were not aligned with the church, and went to England and disappeared. Never was heard from again. Well, the church, needing someone to justify all this ire and activity, took what today we would have called Alice's administrative assistant, a young woman, and burned her at the stake instead.
We got to burn somebody. We got a stake here.
We got to burn. Yeah, we got a stake. We got to burn.
Can't let a stake go to waste here.
So they burned her, and she was the first. This young woman, was the first woman in Irish history to be burned as a stake and a witch. That's the beginning of the book. The book rolls forward. The book rolls forward through the Outlanders, which are the Irish gypsies, and through Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin, really?
Yep. And Charlie Chaplin.
How's he involved?
Well, I'm not going to
give it away. Okay.
Kill this whole thing, and then into modern days in a great trial that is going on right now in the Inns of Court about who is the rightful owner of a bag of ancient Irish gold coins found in a piano by a piano tuner.
And that's a true story too.
And that's everything I've told you except for Charlie Chaplin and the gypsies is true.
But the bag of gold.
The bag of gold in the English courts and Alice Keitler's story, those two ends are true. And the story is the fictional story will weave all of those things together. And
that sounds really interesting. I definitely want to read that.
I am excited to write that one. I've been wanting to write that ever since I learned about Alice Keitler, who, by the way, Keitler's Inn is haunted. There are photos of the ghosts of Alice, or of Alice's AA.
Her Patsy.
Yeah, her the good soldier who fell on her sword.
Oh my God!
So it'll be an interesting book, and it will have paranormal aspects to it.
I got one of mine inspired you. It's very similar to that. I'm in LaPorte County, Indiana, and we are known for those who are into the macabre, for having one of the first women serial killers of her time was Belle Guinness.
Oh, I know about Belle Guinness.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I actually got to investigate her property. There was a house, and it's not there now, but there used to be a house on the actual foundation. The basement was the actual old foundation of her home that she burnt down and faked her own death, in my opinion, and many people's opinions. But yeah, she killed over 40 men, more than, she would poison them sometimes. She would chop them up. She was a very hideous, but incredible for her time woman to get away with what she did.
Well, I always looked upon her as sort of the ecumenical version of slaughter. Mm-hmm. She was not particular about which method she used. So
it was about profit.
After I learned about Alice Keitler, I started thinking about writing a book about the great evil women of all time, and that's where I ran across Belle Guinness.
That's why I wondered.
Yeah, and that's how. So I've got it's sort of the outline of a book along those lines. It'd be the 40 most evil females of all time, or the 24 or something like that. I don't know that I'll ever write it, but it was fun doing the research.
Oh, well, I've had friends that have done research on Belle Guinness in my area, and the official version of history for her is that she died in the fire. Okay. Yeah. But most of us in LaPorte County know she did not die in that fire. The body did not match her physical body, like description and height and everything. There's so much to it. And the fact that even the law enforcement here at that time, the sheriff in that time, might have been in cahoots with her too. Yeah.
Well, that's because the 40 people she killed were all bastards who deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there were a lot of them were from out of town, and she would put a newspaper ad out and say, lonely farm wife in need of husband. And these guys would show up and marry her for a day, empty their bank accounts.
Yeah. Have you read the book, The White City?
Oh yeah. About Holmes. Yeah.
Well, about the Chicago World's Fair.
Yeah. We've had actually Jeffrey Mudgett on, the ancestor of H.H. Holmes.
Oh, really?
As a guest, yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, it is so interesting.
So, but that's you could write the same kind of book about Guinness.
Yeah, exactly. And it was around, when I had, we're towards the end of the show, so we can get a little off topic. It's all right. But when I had, is it Jeffrey Mudgett? Yeah. When I had him on, I brought up about Belle Guinness, and you wonder, she was 1908 is when the fire happened, and she supposedly died, but she was around, she had to have been around in the area when Holmes was and seen the stories and heard about it. You wonder if she was inspired by him a little bit.
Maybe. You don't know. Could be. Who knows? But it was a copycat, huh?
Maybe. I mean, it was, hey, he made some money. I can make some money,
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
Anyway,
that's it. There are so many good stories out there for people like that you could write engaging, entertaining books about.
Especially about the past with people getting away with crimes. Because nowadays it's no fun. They got DNA and forensics and, they Sherlock Holmes it. And, but back in the day, they could just make you disappear and nobody would ever know.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, think it wasn't until the 1930s or 40s before we could actually identify poison in a body. I mean, it wasn't that long ago.
They didn't even know blood types yet.
Yeah, I mean, so this forensic stuff that we see on television all the time now and is used by law enforcement is relatively new.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is we can't get away with it anymore, so we got to behave ourselves, I guess.
Well, and for good authors like you can dig up the past to make some good evil villains with it.
Well, yeah, you can you can do all the things that you can't do humanly in fiction.
Oh yeah. One of the interesting things, I don't know if you're familiar with the Mudgett, Jeffrey Mudgett and his research, and he had a show on his channel that said he thought Holmes was actually also Jack the Ripper.
Oh well, that's interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, just to think,
well,
the hidden realms of history that we might not.
Yeah, you get a hard time. You got a sort of geographical undesirable connection there to be both Jack the Ripper.
He really pulls. They did a whole first one season of it on History Channel. He really makes you convinced that there's a good possibility they could be one and the same person. You should really check it out. It's really cool.
Okay, I'll have to do that.
So when's your next book coming out?
The Sower will probably be out in the spring. The publishing industry, as you probably know, moves very slowly. And I'm hoping I had my first two books released in 2019. I hope to release The Sower in the spring and First Witch in time for the Christmas season in 2020. So, because I think First Witch is going to be just a really good story.
I'm really interested. I tell my wife the description of that story, that sounds like right up the alley of some books she's, not that it's like any book she's read, but like the alley of the kind of genre of books she likes to read. I might have to get that for her, but I want to read it too because it sounds really interesting.
Well, I hope I can do it justice because it is definitely a good story.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. I want to make sure before we end the show too, you get out your information where people should buy your books, where your website is.
Oh, thank you. First of all, website is www.robjung, Jung, all those pronounced Young, robjungwriter.com. I would ask those who are listening that think they might be interested to go on my website and sign up for my monthly newsletter. I will guarantee you that the show will appear in my next month's newsletter. I usually put them out the first of the month, so there'll be one the first of the year. In this case, but that helps keep track of what I'm doing and with my books. But I also review books. I also talk about other authors and the literary events around the country. So that sort of thing. My blog is there. It's called The View from Middle Spunk Creek. So there's that. In terms of where do you find my books? You can order them from any bookstore or bookstore chain. They're all nationally distributed. There are several bookstores around the Midwest where they are stocked. But it's not that there's a handful, so I wouldn't say that. And you can, of course, get them on the internet. and get them on Amazon.
Always ask where you want people to get your books from. Some people are like, no, get them from my website. Don't get them from Amazon. I get screwed over by them, or something like that.
I'm wherever you get the books, I don't really care. If you want to order them from me from my website, I can do that. If you want to get them from Amazon, I'll tell you they're cheaper on Amazon, but you don't get them signed by the author.
Yeah.
But for whatever that's worth. Or your local bookstore. I'm a great promoter of independent bookstores. There's a whole bunch of them. There's one in Minneapolis that I got to give a shout out to called.
Please do.
It's called. This is funny. Now that I was going to do that and I've forgotten the name of the bookstore. It's Once Upon a Crime.
Once Upon a Crime. I love it.
Once Upon a Crime, and it's all crime stories. And it is a little independent bookstore that is just wonderful.
Oh, I love it.
So anybody in the Twin Cities area that is looking for a good read, go to Once Upon a Crime.
I want to find that place because you can ask my wife. I've spent so much money on books over the years, and I have tons of books. And I used to read before I had kids. I used to read 5 books a week. But now it's like 1 book a month if I can pull it off. But it's so sad to see the electronic age come in and bookstores go away. I just love going into a bookstore and spending my time in there and touching and feeling the books and opening them up. And it's sad to see the bookstores go away.
It is, in fact, and I mourn everyone that goes away, because if we don't have sources for this written legacy that we're all involved in one way or the other, we're going to lose a chunk of history.
Right.
And you already know my attachment to history and how I think it affects and ought to affect what we do going forward.
I mean, imagine if everything's electronic and then we have the whole EMP worldwide or something knocks out electronics and digital is all erased, and we'll be scrounging to find these books.
The ultimate hack.
Right.
All wisdom and knowledge has just disappeared.
The great Library of Alexandria, all digital gone.
Yeah. Zip.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's a story.
Yeah, the Library of Alexandria. That yeah, heartbreaking, and that's long way before we were even thoughts.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you, Rob, for being on the show. That is it, guys. We will be back next Sunday. Same bad time, same bad channel, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Central, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. Check us out on Patreon. Help us out, $2 a month. We stream out to YouTube. We stream out to Facebook. It costs money, and your $2 a month help us do that. So if you want to help the show, do that. Otherwise, sharing the show out and telling your friends about it is the biggest help. And everybody that does that, thank you so much. Keep telling people about Paranormal Soup. Get the word out there. Let them know this is a place to come, be open, free to talk to each other in chat rooms or call on the show and discuss the paranormal with no bias and no judgments at all. This is the place. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Have a great night. Next Sunday, I forgot to say who the guest is going to be. Carol Obley, and I think she's a medium. I don't remember. We'll find out. I'll have the postings. Just that's why you got to follow our page on Facebook and on YouTube so you know what our show is going to be. All right, guys, see you next week.